Magical World War I. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 251 Blood Spirit. Charlotte took the box, still a little bit incredulous, and said, "Your father can actually make a saint-level extraordinary weapon in half an hour. It's incredible." Mecklenburg smiled slightly and said, "How is this possible?" Charlotte's face changed slightly, and suddenly there was an ominous sign. Mecklenburg saw his face change, knowing that it was a misunderstanding, and said with a smile, "As far as I know, even for a saint-level alchemist, the shortest time to make a saint-level extraordinary weapon is 2 years and 6 months when the materials are sufficient. That saint-level extraordinary weapon is now in the hands of the Count of Brittany. It is a saint-level extraordinary pistol." Charlotte was slightly surprised. He really didn't expect that Anne's father actually had a saint-level extraordinary weapon in his hands. Charlotte calmed down a little, because he saw that Mecklenburg was full of confidence and didn't seem to be fooling him. Since the person was in front of him, even if the other party wanted to do something, he could adapt to the situation. Although a high-level alchemist has a respected status, his actual combat ability is average, so he may be able to kill the opponent with one stab of his sword. Mecklenburg didn't know that Charlotte had such bad intentions, but he also knew that Charlotte's patience might have reached its limit, so he smiled and revealed the answer, saying, "You also know that we and the Byron people fought an unprecedented war in Felenden. Both sides deployed dozens of saints, and quite a few saints fell." Charlotte nodded slightly, and Mecklenburg continued, "Earl Gallinold killed a Blood Clan saint and destroyed his weapon. He found this weapon very interesting, so he entrusted it to us, the Stars, to repair it." Charlotte didn't expect that after just hearing about Anne's father, he heard about Sophia Gallinold's father again. He casually asked, "What is Earl Gallinold's political identity?" Mecklenburg was slightly surprised and said, "He is the Minister of War, a top official in the Empire." "Haven't you heard of him?" Charlotte's forehead was sweating. He really hadn't heard of him. He knew the weight of the Minister of War. If he were on Earth, he would probably be a 5-star general in the United States or a 7-star marshal in France. Charlotte really didn't know that Sophia Gallinold's family was so powerful, and Count Gallinold was actually the Minister of War. This Minister of War had just killed a Blood Clan saint level on the battlefield of Felenden. Mecklenburg waited for a while, and when Charlotte didn't ask again, he continued, "But the most critical part of that weapon was destroyed, and my father couldn't repair it, so Count Gallinold sold it to Singh. My father was going to dismantle it and get a batch of precious materials, but he didn't expect you to send this saint-level blood core. You must have guessed that the blood core of that saint-level extraordinary weapon destroyed by Count Gallinold was the blood core. With your saint-level blood core, my father can repair it." Charlotte finally understood why Singh, a saint-level alchemist, could make a saint-level blood-sucking weapon for herself in half an hour. He took a deep breath and opened the box in his hand. Inside was a short piece of chain. It was very thin, probably thinner than chopsticks. Of course, there were no chopsticks in the old world. And it was not too long, just enough to wrap around the hand. "Well, this is a bracelet. This bracelet is blood-colored and very delicate, but it has nothing to do with weapons." Mecklenburg said in a low voice, "However, this weapon requires the secret method of the Duolian family to drive it. Even if you cannot use it, it does not matter." "It is a holy-level blood-sucking weapon," Charlotte asked calmly. "What is its name? What kind of magical use is it?" Mecklenburg replied, "Its name is Blood Spirit." The weapon master who designed the Blood Spirit was very clever. It can show different forms and give birth to different properties with different blood cores embedded in it. Originally, this weapon looked like a pistol, but it was embedded with a holy-level blood core of the Duolian family. "I don't know what changes it will produce." Charlotte could not get any useful information from Mecklenburg, so she could only stop asking. He infused a little blood glory, and was sure that this was indeed an extraordinary and strange object, and it was unfathomable. At least he could not drive it now. Charlotte put away the blood spirit and said, "I have one last request. I hope the Stars can keep it a secret for me. Just say that I used a Baron-level blood core." Mecklenburg smiled and said, "I can help, but you also know that the relevant documents have to be sent back to the palace. Whether the news will be leaked there is not something we can control at the Stars workshop." Charlotte smiled slightly and said, As long as you do your best, I won't force you. Wiloma Stars did not expect that the royal mission this time would be completed so easily. He chatted with Charlotte for a while, then said goodbye. There are still many things to do at the Stars workshop, so I can't accompany Mr. Mecklin. Charlotte didn't mind and said, I'm leaving too. He left the Stars workshop and did not return to the carriage. He strolled in the block for a while. When he passed a shop with magic alchemy crystal floor-to-ceiling windows, he looked around so that no one was paying attention and stepped into the mirror world in one step. The mirror spirit born in this window reacted almost the same as the mirror spirit in the magic alchemy crystal glass window of the shop on Élysée Pastoral Street. Charlotte's tactics did not change. Half an hour later, he dealt with the mirror spirit and took control of the mirror world in this glass window. However, the Rose District was too far away, and there was no way to connect this mirror world with Charlotte's mirror world on Élysée Pastoral Street. Charlotte didn't care. He just wanted to find a quiet place to check the newly acquired blood rhinoceros. He didn't dare to use his power in the Star Workshop, but in the mirror world, he was not worried. He transferred all the bloody glory into the bloody vortex on his right arm, and the surging blood energy was focused from this bloody vortex into the bloody rhinoceros. This holy level secret treasure was indeed of extraordinary quality. Charlotte poured almost all of the bloody glory into it, but it still didn't move. When Charlotte couldn't squeeze out any more blood energy and was ready to give up, the short chain snaked up and, as if alive, drilled into the bloody vortex in his right arm. It was obvious that this holy level extraordinary artifact was full of spirituality, but it just refused to recognize Charlotte as its owner. Charlotte pulled it out of his right arm, but as soon as he let go, the blood spirit went back in. It seemed that except for changing from a holy level blood core to a holy level extraordinary artifact, it had not changed at all. Chapter 252 Business is about taking what you need. Unfortunately, my strength is still too poor. Charlotte gave up trying. He stayed in the mirror world of the window for a while, recovered 30% to 40% of his blood energy, and then stepped out of the window. Charlotte checked the withered rose. Just like the last time, the bullets transformed by killing the mirror spirit in the mirror world would disappear after leaving the mirror world. Even if they entered the mirror world again, these bullets would not appear again. However, these bullets were not valuable items, nor were they magic-breaking armor-blasting bombs. If they were gone, they were gone. Charlotte returned the same way and found the carriage still parked in the street. After getting on the carriage, he did not let Mrs. Nancy go back to number 58, Élysée Country Street immediately. Instead, he pondered for a moment, took out the Baron's blood core, and drew out a blood rose from the bloody vortex in his left arm, and said to Mrs. Nancy, "Go to the largest store and ask if the quality of this rapier can be improved." Mrs. Nancy held the blood rose and the Baron's blood core and got off the carriage. After a while, she came back with 2 more items and whispered, "I asked 5 shops, and they all said they couldn't do it." Charlotte took back the blood rose, took out the withered rose, and said, "Go ask 5 more shops." Mrs. Nancy left as she was told, but came back in time and said, 3 shops said they could, but the prices were all very high. The lowest price was 1,500 écus. Charlotte was speechless and said, "Got it." He took the withered rose back. He spent 200 gold pounds on this extraordinary weapon. The gold pound has a slightly higher purchasing power than the écu. The price of the blood core of the blood baron is difficult to estimate, but it is estimated that it will not be less than 1,000 écus. If he spends another 1,500 écus to make a new weapon, the cost will be close to 3,000 écus. This price is also fair. You have to know that Baron Fail spent 3,600 écus to buy the dark luxury. It is not an extraordinary weapon, but just a luxury item. If you only spend 3,000 écus, you can get a high-level blood-sucking weapon, which is a very cost-effective thing. But the account cannot be calculated in this way. Julian gave the withered rose a friendly price. The original price is far more than 200 gold pounds. The blood core of the blood baron is in short supply and very precious. If it is operated properly, it is possible to double or triple the price of 1,000 écus. Charlotte thought that it would be better for her to sell the Baron's blood core and directly exchange it for a blood-sucking weapon. It is estimated that she can also save a withered rose and processing fees. He secretly sighed that alchemists are really profitable. This order can earn 1 or 2,000 écus. He may not be able to save so many écus in his lifetime just relying on salary. Just as Charlotte was about to ask Mrs. Nancy to drive the carriage back to number 58, Avenue des Champs-Élysées, she heard a voice outside the car saying, "Sir, I am Sean Connor from the Blue Magpie Workshop in the Stars block. I heard that you have a Baron-level blood core. I wonder if you can sell it." All the workshops and shops in this block belong to the Stars Workshop, so Charlotte knew that if she asked Mrs. Nancy to go to the shops in the Stars block to ask if the quality of blood-sucking weapons could be improved, it would definitely catch the attention of someone interested. He whispered, "How much do you plan to bid?" Sean Connor's voice came into the carriage, saying, 1,500 EQ. Charlotte answered without hesitation, "The price is fair, but I'm not short of money. I only plan to sell at a high level." Sean Connor's voice soon rang again, saying, "Can we come to my workshop to chat?" Charlotte said, "Let's go out and find a cafe." The Stars block is famous for its alchemical products, but the environment for drinking coffee is not very good. Charlotte pushed open the door of the carriage. Sean Connor was a middle-aged man with a resolute look. He was dressed very cleanly, but his face was slightly tired. He walked into the carriage calmly and sat opposite Charlotte, and also looked at the strange young man. Charlotte gave an order, and Mrs. Nancy drove the carriage out of the block. After turning 2 streets, you can see many cafes. Charlotte randomly chose one, got off the carriage with Sean Connor, and walked into the cafe. Charlotte ordered a cup of specialty coffee from this store, and Sean Connor ordered a cup of classic bitter coffee, which tasted similar to American coffee on Earth. Sean Connor spoke first and said, "You asked several stores and wanted to upgrade the quality of 2 blood-sucking weapons, but you didn't place an order. I guess you are not very satisfied with these 2 blood-sucking weapons." Charlotte smiled slightly, and didn't say that the other party guessed wrong. The withered rose is indeed less powerful, but it is also very useful. The blood rose is his main weapon, not even one. Charlotte found the blood-sucking rapier very easy to use. It matched his Asilo swordsmanship very well and could also be used to absorb the bloody vortex. There was simply no better choice. Seeing that Charlotte did not refute, Sean Connor thought that he had guessed it right, and said, "I don't know, you want to improve the quality of the 2 blood-sucking weapons for yourself or for your friends, but you know, except for Baron, in other countries, blood-sucking weapons are considered to be the lower-priced type of extraordinary weapons. Even in Baron, due to the different clans, the adaptability of blood-sucking weapons is relatively poor, but the Baron-level blood core, because of its wide universality, can create a brand new blood-sucking weapon suitable for the owner, or improve the quality of the blood-sucking weapon at hand. It may not be enough in several human empires, but in Baron, it can definitely be sold at a sky-high price." Charlotte interjected at the right time, "Flour is more expensive than bread." Sean Connor just felt that this sentence was so appropriate, and smiled. "It is true, business is about getting what you need. You have 2 unsuitable blood-sucking weapons and a Baron's blood core. I have 2 high-level blood-sucking weapons, but lack customers willing to pay for them. I'd like to know if the 2 high-level blood-sucking weapons I have are what you need? If so, we can continue the discussion." Sean Connor took out 2 pistols. They were obviously made by the same alchemist. Except for the color matching and a few parts, the main structure and size are almost exactly the same. The 2 pistols are exquisitely shaped, elegant, and very easy to hold. They reminded Charlotte of the rattlesnake produced by SIG Sauer. Even a military blind like him would think that this gun is quite beautiful. Charlotte pondered for a moment and glanced at the workshop owner again. Although he spoke in a high-spirited and confident tone, the fatigue between his eyebrows could not be concealed. Charlotte said lightly, "I guess you spent all your wealth to build these 2 blood-sucking weapons, right?" The bitter taste on Sean Connor's face could not be concealed immediately. "That is the taste of life. The main tone is always bitter, with only a little sweetness occasionally." Chapter 253 Alchemists always have a dream. Sean Connor took several breaths, and then he seemed to struggle out of the state of being drowned. He smiled bitterly and said, "I was too impatient, and you saw through it. I went to Baron to do business and came across 2 high-level blood cores at a very favorable price. I wanted to sell them, but I couldn't help it. You may not understand, but alchemists always have a dream to create 1 or 2 masterpieces. I exhausted all my resources and borrowed money to create these 2 blood-sucking pistols. I thought I could sell them at a high price, but after several auctions in Baron, they all failed to sell." Charlotte was slightly surprised and asked, "Why is this?" Sean Connor was silent for a long time, and then he whispered, "I am from Fars, and I studied classical alchemy." Charlotte suddenly realized and said, Classical alchemy is popular in Baron. He had several extraordinary weapons in his hands, both from classical alchemy and classic alchemy. He didn't feel any inconvenience. Instead, he felt that the several anti-space extraordinary guns made by classic alchemy were more convenient to use. Except that the magic-breaking armor-blasting bullets they used were a little expensive, there were no disadvantages. But Charlotte could also understand why the vampires of Byron didn't like classic alchemy. Vampires don't like machines. They are a special kind of evil, and most machines are ineffective against them. The weapons made by classic alchemy are extraordinary against humans, but they are inferior to vampires. Vampires actually pay more attention to the damage caused by weapons to their own kind, just like humans. Sean Connor whispered, "I'm willing to sell one of the pistols to you in exchange for your Baron blood core." Charlotte smiled and said, "I want both guns. Give me a 30% discount." Sean Connor looked up in astonishment and said, "That's impossible. I'm already selling them at a loss. Another 30% discount? You're asking me to do that?" Charlotte spread her hands and said, "You can't sell these two pistols anyway, so why not sell them both to me?" Sean Connor flatly refused. "No. I will only sell one of them." Charlotte did not continue to argue with him, but asked, "How much did you plan to sell these two pistols for?" Sean Connor said with a gloomy look, 5,000 écus. 5,000 écus for one, and 16,000 écus for two. When Charlotte heard the price, she did some mental calculations and came to the conclusion that 1 écu was equivalent to 18,900 RMB in purchasing power. According to Sean Connor's initial offer, the price of each of these two pistols was close to 100 million RMB, and the total price of the two pistols exceeded 3 small targets. How could this be considered bloodshed? How could this be considered a knock on the bone? This was definitely a top capitalist. His eyes lit up slightly, and he asked, "Will there be any special bonus when these two pistols are together?" Sean Connor's eyes sparkled slightly, and he said, "The blood cores of these two pistols are from the Nicholas clan. The blood core of one of the pistols is engraved with X6 agility, and the blood core of the other pistol is engraved with X7 agility. When the two pistols belong to the same owner, the person can gain the effect of X9 agility. As for the other attributes," Charlotte smiled slightly, calm and composed, but her heart was like a stormy sea. There was only one thought floating above the waves in her heart: "I want it. I want them all. I must get these two pistols, even though this is the largest expense in my 2 lifetimes combined. Most soldiers of the Knights of Favonius only earn a few dozen centimes a week. This money is even enough for me to support the Knights of Favonius for 2 or 3 months, but it's worth it." Charlotte doesn't even necessarily need the attacks of these two weapons. As long as he can increase his agility to X9, his speed will be absolutely invincible below the Saint level. What's more, he also has the agility skill X2. Charlotte even uttered a sound. He didn't know how good his acting was, but Sean Connor obviously didn't see through it. He said in a very trying voice, "Even now, I can't accept a pistol for less than 3,000 écus. The two pistols together are at least 10,000 écus." Charlotte even patted the other party's shoulder with sympathy and said, "You can't sell it. Besides, have you ever thought that someone will find an acquaintance and ask you to buy them separately?" Sean Connor's eyes lit up and said, "No matter which one I sell, I will raise the price of the remaining one, because only the buyer knows the superiority of these two pistols. Extraordinary weapons should be expensive. This is something that can save lives and kill enemies in battle. How can it be cheap?" Charlotte asked, "Have you ever thought that the person who buys one of the pistols will not use it, but just collect it?" Sean Connor said anxiously, "How is it possible? My creativity, my work, is flawless. How could anyone not use it?" Charlotte shrugged and said, "Many nobles don't actually go to fight in person." Sean Connor argued, "I won't sell the fruit of my labor to that kind of person." Charlotte sighed and said, "Only that kind of person has money. Now I know why you can't sell these two pistols. You're so stubborn. You'll go bankrupt." Sean Connor was like being hit in the soft spot. The whole person became depressed, and kept muttering, "I won't go bankrupt. I won't go bankrupt. I still have a chance to make a comeback. I will definitely be able to become a great alchemist." Charlotte said with sympathy, "Sell them to me, and you'll have the capital to make a comeback. I guess you can't bear the debt anymore, and the interest on those borrowed money must be very high. You still have a chance now, but if you keep dragging it on, the interest will keep rolling. Maybe even if you sell them, the money you get will only be to pay the interest, and there will be no chance to get back on your feet." Sean Connor lowered his head and murmured for many times. Charlotte did not disturb him. This man needed to be alone and think carefully. After more than half an hour, Sean Connor made up his mind and said, "You can take the Baron's blood core, 2 blood-sucking weapons, and 6,500 AQ. Charlotte shook her head and said, "I can't give you the 2 blood-sucking weapons in my hand, the Baron's blood core plus 3,000 AQ. Sean Connor's forward veins bulged slightly, and he said, "This price is impossible." Charlotte said, "Both of my weapons are worth more than 1,000 AQ. Your offer is too insincere." The two argued repeatedly on the price, and the bottom line of both sides loosened little by little, and the price also tended to the psychological price of the two. When the price reached the range of Baron's blood core plus 7,000 EQ and 4,500 EQ, Charlotte used her trump card, called the waiter over, paid for 2 cups of coffee, and said, "How about you think about it for a while?" Sean Connor felt a struggle in his heart, and finally pushed a box with 2 pistols in front of Charlotte and said, "Baron's blood core plus 5,500 EQ. This is my last bottom line. I can see that you like them very much. I hope they can accompany you to achieve success and become a legend." Chapter 254, Future Famous Gun, Rattler. Charlotte agreed without further bargaining. Of course, he didn't have that much money, not even the savings in the savings union. After all, it was 5,500 EQ, which was equivalent to a small target in purchasing power when converted into RMB. Only by going back to Machupi could he get enough cash to pay Sean Connor and complete the deal. Charlotte proposed to get the money and explained that he would leave Strasbourg and go to another city. Sean Connor was obviously very hesitant. He thought for a moment and made a suggestion. The two sides would exchange goods first, and then he would follow Charlotte to get the cash. Charlotte didn't care. The owner of the Blue Magpie workshop in the Stars district immediately called a child to run errands on the street. Soon, 7 or 8 low-level alchemists, led by a middle-aged woman, rushed to the cafe. The lady was obviously Sean Connor's wife. She was a little worried about her husband, but she also knew that she couldn't stop her husband. She just said goodbye to him gently, hoping that her husband would come back soon. The lady took the Baron's blood core, and Sean Connor seemed to have exhausted all his strength. He pushed the gun box to Charlotte and said, "Now they are yours." Charlotte smiled and said, "Let's go." He snapped his fingers, released the dark luxury, and said to Mrs. Nancy, "Go back to number 58, Champs-Élysées. If Anne comes over these 2 days, just say I'm out for a day or 2 and will be back soon." "Don't worry." Mrs. Nancy drove the carriage away. Sean Connor looked at the dark luxury and couldn't help but walk closer to touch it, and asked, "Is it the dark luxury made by the Saint Alchemy Master Stardust?" Charlotte smiled and said, "It is the dark luxury. We have to hurry. Ordinary carriages need to travel for several days. Even if it is the dark luxury, if we don't grab some time, I'm afraid we won't be able to come back tomorrow." Sean Connor followed Charlotte on the dark luxury. He was finally completely relieved about the deal. Those who can own the dark luxury will never be short of a few thousand AQ. Well, a normal person wouldn't spend thousands of EQ to buy an extraordinary carriage. Charlotte got on the dark luxury and opened the gun box. Looking at the 2 high-level extraordinary blood-sucking pistols lying quietly inside, she took one out. After getting this blood-sucking pistol, Charlotte immediately found out that this extraordinary pistol has 6 attributes: speed increase, life devouring, bullet activation, anti-space, invisibility, and poison. It has a composite magazine that can be loaded with 3 types of bullets: ordinary, energy, and magic breaking. Among them, the speed increases agility x6. Life devouring can devour the enemy's vitality and restore the holder's injuries. It can also condense blood energy bullets, which is similar to the attributes of the withered rose, but it has the additional characteristic of restoring the holder's injuries. Activating bullets is a very different attribute. It can make ordinary bullets, as if they have life, drill around in the enemy's body, and it can also make blood energy bullets constantly devour the enemy's life, strengthen themselves, and deal continuous damage. Anti-space, invisibility, and venom are not to be mentioned. It can hide in anything, and can also allow the holder to hide in the air. It can also attach strong toxicity to the bullets it shoots. It is indeed a high-level extraordinary pistol, even more lethal than the Firewheel Silver Rhino. Charlotte put down this pistol and took out another one. This extraordinary pistol has 8 attributes: amplified speed, devouring life, ultra-long range, anti-space, eagle eyes, bear power, hot blood, and sleeplessness. It also has a composite magazine that can be loaded with 3 types of bullets: ordinary, energy, and magic breaking. The amplification speed of this extraordinary pistol is slightly stronger than the previous one, which is light agility x7. The ultra-long range is not to be mentioned, which is stronger than the range of the anti-space long-range rifle in Charlotte's hand, and the killing range is extremely wide. Eagle eyes can enhance vision, bear power can increase strength, hot blood can stimulate physical fitness in a short period of time, and sleeplessness can sacrifice life in exchange for endurance. It was hard to say which of these 2 extraordinary pistols was better, but both were loved by Charlotte. He stroked them for a while and asked, "Do they have names?" Sean Connor said, "No, I had hoped that they could become the masterpiece of the alchemist's career, but they were never sold, so I never gave them names." Charlotte said, "I think they can be called rattlers." Charlotte always felt that they looked like the Rattler short-barreled rifles produced by SIG Sauer on Earth, so she just casually named them that. Sean Connor's face froze slightly, and he whispered, "Good name. These 2 pistols actually have a name, which is exactly Rattlers." Because they couldn't be sold, Sean Connor cancelled the name, but he didn't expect that their first owner would still name them Rattlers. This can only be said to be God's will. Of these 2 extraordinary pistols, one was painted with red primer on the key parts, and Charlotte planned to name it Red Rattlers, and one was painted with blue lacquer on some parts, and Charlotte planned to name it Blue Rattlers. He had the 2 blood-sucking pistols in his wrists, and with a slight shake, he could take them out and shoot. The Dark Luxury, pulled by 8 magic horses, was just trotting in Strasbourg, but after leaving the city, it galloped and left the dust all the way. The Dark Luxury galloped at full speed, much faster than ordinary carriages, and the magic horses had long endurance, which was not comparable to ordinary horses. They could run for several days and nights without rest. At this time, there were still sporadic orcs outside the city of Strasbourg, but most of them could not catch up with the Dark Luxury at all. The orcs who could catch up with the Dark Luxury would generally be a little smarter and would not risk their lives to stop the carriage. After all, those who can drive an extraordinary carriage must be great nobles. In the old world, great nobles generally mean extraordinary, or even high-level extraordinary. In the evening, the Dark Luxury had arrived at Machupi. When Sean Connor saw Machupi, his face changed slightly, but when the Dark Luxury drove into Machupi, the scene in front of him surprised him again. Sean Connor was from Strasbourg, so of course he knew about the ruins of the ancient orc fortress, which was only 200 kilometers away from the capital of Fars, but he didn't expect that the ruins had been revived and became quite prosperous. Charlotte returned to Machupi, feeling more at home than at number 58, Élysée Pastoral Street. He took out 2 folds of fur banknotes, handed them to Sean Connor, and said with a smile, "Please count them." While counting the money, Sean Connor couldn't help asking, "Why is this place revitalized?" Charlotte felt that this question was difficult to answer, so she smiled and said, "Probably because there is no tax here." Sean Connor's eyes lit up immediately. Charlotte didn't stop, paid the money for the gun, and returned to Strasbourg with Sean Connor. The next morning, he sent Sean Connor back to the Star Workshop. When he returned to number 58, Élysée Pastoral Street, he unexpectedly received a document asking him to return to his jurisdiction as soon as possible and not to stay in Strasbourg. Chapter 255 Orc Holy Ranks. The wording of the document was harsh, and Charlotte did not dare to neglect it. He only had time to say goodbye to Anne briefly, and then hurriedly left Strasbourg with all his men. This time, there was no Sophia Gallinold in his team. There were no junior students from the University of Sheffield. This time back to Strasbourg, Charlotte had gained a lot, both in terms of position and personal strength. Except for being a little reluctant to leave Anne, he was in a pretty good mood. After leaving Strasbourg, Charlotte joined the troops left outside the city and headed straight for Machupi. Although he encountered a small group of defeated orcs on the way, they did not cause him any trouble. After all, he was now commanding the main force of the Knights of Favonius and the Orc Maze Guards, which was enough to confront any orc tribe head-on. Back to Machupi, the first thing Charlotte did was to transform the orc warriors captured on the way into Maze Guards, and then he discovered a big problem. Among the more than 300 orcs he captured, there was actually one who could not complete the NPC transformation and could not be turned into a maze guard at all. Charlotte was quite surprised at first, but soon it was not surprise, but horror. Who cannot be NPC? This answer is simply unbearable to face. Charlotte thought of 17 or 18 ideas in an instant, but finally decided to do nothing. It's like finding a tiger mixed in with his flock of sheep. When the tiger pretends to be a sheep, the shepherd should also pretend to be a sheep, instead of messing with the tiger and reminding it to pay attention to its identity. With this variable, he did not stay in Machupi any longer, and let Dorothy lead the elite of the Knights of Favonius to set off, and he took the Orc Maze Guards to take another road. Charlotte didn't have to work hard to identify the oddball in the team. It was an old orc, who should be a leopard man like Frederica. Although he was old, he was still strong, tall and thin, and refined like iron. After leaving Machupi for a day, the old leopard man had not left the team yet, so Charlotte stopped. He certainly could not take him to Silver Pigeon Castle. Charlotte took out the red and blue rattlesnakes. He did not intend to use them to fight, but gently placed them on his left leg and put them into the bloody vortex of his left leg. He did not do this in front of Sean Connor, but he was about to face a terrible orc supernatural being, so Charlotte would never hide it. The two blood-sucking pistols echoed with the light agility runes in the bloody vortex, which raised this ability to the level of X10. Charlotte felt as light as if nothing was there, and her confidence increased immediately. The Orc Maze Guards were also divided into 20 to 30 combat teams according to 50 people per team, just like the Knights of Favonius. Charlotte first commanded a combat team of orcs with a large number of old, weak, sick and disabled people to find a place to camp 10 kilometers away. After half an hour, he ordered another combat team with lower combat effectiveness to join the one in front. The third time, he carefully sent out the old leopard team. After the team set off and walked for about 10 minutes, Charlotte led the remaining Orc Maze Guards without hesitation and changed direction to march at full speed. In the evening, when Charlotte stopped to rest, he checked his Orc Maze Guards and found that the 3 combat teams he sent out had all returned, and they had mixed into the team without his knowledge. This was a big surprise. Charlotte was very anxious that night, and at dawn, he breathed a sigh of relief and changed another tactic. After a dazzling transfer, he left the old leopard and most of the team in place, and only took the most elite maze guards to run away. But in the evening, he found that his team was getting bigger and bigger, and finally all the maze guards came back, and the old leopard was hiding safely among them. On the third day, Charlotte gritted her teeth and gave up the 9 extraordinary maze guards. She ran alone with the help of urine escape, and used the light agility technique X10 to run all night. When the sky was slightly bright, she saw an orc camp waiting steadily in front of her. Charlotte took a long breath and finally realized that the other party was really playing a trick on her. Just as she had discovered that there was something wrong with this old leopard man, the other party also discovered her little trick. Charlotte took the collapse mountain in her hand and strode into the orc camp. With a shout, all the orc maze guards drew their weapons and pointed them at the old leopard man. This old orc originally pretended to be unsteady and seemed injured, but facing the hostility of all the orcs, he was stunned at first. Then he smiled, stood up and said, "Human boy, you are very smart, you actually saw through my identity, but do you really know who you are facing?" Charlotte had a toothache and said, "I am not familiar with the orc's holy rank." The old leopard man's eyes flashed with a sharp light, and said, "You have seen it a long time ago? I am a holy rank." Charlotte gritted her teeth and said, "Yes." He did not explain how he saw through it. There was no need to explain such a thing. The old leopard man grinned and asked, "Aren't you afraid? I can easily kill all your men." Charlotte thought, "Why not? But if you don't leave, what can I do?" He replied, "Being afraid is useless. Besides, you have mixed in with my maze guards. I guess your condition should not be at its peak. You were beaten by the Saint of Strasbourg, right?" The old leopard man chuckled and said, "You guessed it right, but even if I only have 10% of my strength left, it is enough to kill you and these traitors." Charlotte never thought that he would face a saint, or the most ferocious orc saint. He didn't know why this old leopard man mixed in with his team, but he didn't want to know, because he was not a fan of "I would rather die than hear the truth in the morning." The old leopard man didn't take action immediately. Instead, he looked at the maze guards with a sad face. After a long time, he said lightly, "Do you know why the orcs would go all out?" How could Charlotte know? The old leopard man didn't need his answer and continued, "Because the Byron Empire promised that a blood ancestor would appear to help us defeat Strasbourg. It's just that those damn vampires deceived us. Without the appearance of the evil blood god, what awaits us orcs is a catastrophe. Strasbourg is protected by the 9 righteous gods. Even if we, the 16 orc saints, Join forces, we cannot break through the city's defense wall. We cast the strong wind spell for more than 10 days and exhausted our mana. Suddenly, all the saints of Strasbourg were dispatched. Hundreds of thousands of orc troops and several orc saint shamans were gone. Orcs, the old leopard man sighed, like crying. Charlotte had a complicated expression. He didn't know why the other party said this to him. Chapter 256 Orcs are also humans. Charlotte hesitated for a moment, handed over a cotton handkerchief, and said, "Wipe your tears." The old leopard took the cotton handkerchief, wiped it twice, and said angrily, "What tears? Where are my tears? I didn't cry." He stretched out his hand and squeezed it, and the cotton handkerchief was crushed into pieces. The strength of the hand that can crush cotton cloth is much greater than that of crushing walnuts. Charlotte didn't say anything. He traveled through time and made a lot of small things to make life comfortable, such as this cheap cotton handkerchief. He would carry several of them every day and throw them away after use. It was very convenient, and it didn't matter if he had one less. Charlotte's brain kept turning. Although the old leopard hadn't started to kill, he felt that it was a matter of time, unless he had the ability to turn the situation around. He took a long breath and decided to do something big, either to die or to turn the tables. Charlotte said slowly, "Senior, I believe you should understand the truth. There is only one kind of human being, and there should be only one kind of orcs. They should not be divided into countless tribes. There is only one kind of human being. Orcs are also human beings, and enemies should not last for thousands of years. This failure, for the orcs, should not be just a failure, but a chance to see the rainbow of success." The old leopard man didn't react. Charlotte reflected on herself whether what she said was a bit high-sounding. He decided to lower the threshold of understanding and said, "The orcs should have a king and you not under this king." The old leopard man waved his hand and said, "Stop. Go to the previous sentence." Charlotte hurriedly said, "This failure should not be just a failure for the orcs, but a chance to see the rainbow of success." The old leopard man said, "Not this sentence." Charlotte said, "There is only one kind of human, and orcs are also human." The old leopard man interrupted him and said, "Okay, don't say the second half." He pondered for a long time and repeated this sentence over and over again. "There is only one kind of human, and orcs are also human." What a profound sentence. Why can't I think of it? If I had heard this sentence earlier, I could have prevented this disaster. Charlotte accurately found the old leopard man's needs and whispered, "There is only one kind of human. And there should be only one kind of orcs, and they should not be divided into countless tribes. Humans are human, orcs are also human, and they should have the right to survive openly on Earth." The old leopard man slapped his thigh and shouted wildly, "That's it." Charlotte wiped the sweat off her face and thought, "What else do I need to say to get this old man to let me go?" The old leopard man stood up and said, "I understand why the orcs failed. Humans are humans, and orcs are humans too. They should also have the right to live openly on Earth." Charlotte thought, "Don't you think the previous sentence is also important?" But he immediately realized that the concept of tribe was deeply rooted in the hearts of every orc, and that orcs were indeed of different races and had different living habits, so there was no way to unify them. He tried to instill the concept of great unity in the old leopard man, but the old leopard man didn't listen at all. He didn't intend to change the old leopard man's mind. He just wanted to use words to fight for a chance to survive. Charlotte was just about to talk about the concept of orcs are also humans when she heard the old leopard man ask, "Do you want to be an orc?" Charlotte was startled and thought to herself, "Are you asking me to reincarnate as an orc?" No, there is no concept of reincarnation in this world. The 9 righteous gods will not play this trick. Then she heard the old leopard man shout in a low voice, "I have thought of many ways to restore the ancient orc kingdom. I also prayed to the orc gods, the eternal and illusionary dragons. Finally, on a stormy night, I received the revelation of the eternal and illusionary dragons, and created the secret method of beast god transfiguration, which can transform orcs into humans, and humans into orcs." Charlotte's mind suddenly became clear, and she shouted, "You are the killer of the Orc Assassin League." The old leopard man grinned and said, "Yes, I am Domitian." Charlotte felt a chill in her heart. The Orc Assassin League has 7 leaders, 3 of whom are saints, and Domitian is one of them. This orc saint was famous and brutal, and countless politicians from all over the old world had died at his hands. Domitian even had 3 successful assassinations of saints. Charlotte's mind was wandering, and she asked, "You are not here to assassinate me, are you?" Domitian chuckled and said, You didn't take the slogan of our Orc Assassin League as true, did you? If we don't claim that, how can we get customers? If there are endless assassinations, how can this industry continue? However, young Orc assassins are getting more and more stupid nowadays, and some of them are really obsessed with such advertising slogans. Let's talk about something serious. I can teach you the Orc transformation technique, and you can become an Orc. A smart young man like you should be a leopard man. Charlotte was embarrassed and did not dare to refuse, for fear that the leader of the Orc Assassin League would turn against him and kill people. So she said, "I'm afraid I can't learn it." Domitian held his head and said, "It doesn't matter. The Beast God transformation technique is a very simple little spell. Please accept my consciousness." Charlotte only felt that countless profound thoughts fell on his forehead, countless secret methods, and various changes penetrated his mind. He wanted to refuse but couldn't. After a long time, he heard Domitian say, "You must practice the Beast God transformation technique well. Next time I come back, if you have practiced successfully, I will take you to do something big. If you have not practiced successfully, I will kill you." Charlotte opened his eyes, but found that the old leopard man had disappeared without a trace. He was still frightened and thought about it for a long time, but he didn't understand why the old leopard man sneaked into his Orc maze guard. And why did he suddenly leave? As for what big thing Domitian said, he would not follow him to do it. As long as the war is over, he will go back to Strasbourg. He doesn't believe that the leader of the Orc Assassin League dares to go to Strasbourg. This is not the case before the war. Before the war, Strasbourg did not prohibit Orcs from entering and leaving, and even Frederica could go to college. But after the war, the Orcs joined the Baron side, and no Orcs should be able to enter Strasbourg anymore. As soon as Charlotte thought of this, the various secrets of Orc shapeshifting appeared in his mind, and his face suddenly became ugly. Orc shapeshifting is very popular in the Orc Assassin League. Of course, these Orc killers prefer to wear a cat mask made by Orc shapeshifting, rather than working hard to practice this secret method. Domitian can change into 1,000 forms and have infinite incarnations. Strasbourg can't stop him. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 257, Beast God Transformation. Charlotte led the Orc maze guards and marched aimlessly for several days before he was sure that Domitian had indeed not caught up. He also didn't know what the purpose of this Orc saint was. He came mysteriously and left freely. In the middle, he even cried. Charlotte calmed down afterwards and was 100% sure that this Orc saint was not here to assassinate him. He was not yet a big shot that required a saint to take action. He guessed that Domitian was injured at the time and might be avoiding the search of the human saint, but he had no evidence at all. Moreover, he didn't think that the human saint would patiently distinguish that this was a group of Orc maze guards from the Knights of Favonius and let them go. They would definitely kill them all. Charlotte recommended the Orc maze guards under his command and marched towards Silver Pigeon Castle. He also spent a few days thinking about the Beast God transformation technique. He has the ability of Blood Flame transformation, but Blood Flame transformation can only transform into a ball of blood flame, not the kind of transformation that can change in thousands of ways. Its biggest function is to escape and repair injuries, and it can hardly be used in combat. Although the Beast God transformation is exaggerated in Domitian's mouth, it is said that on a stormy night, he received the revelation of the eternal and illusory dragon and created the secret method of Beast God transformation. But the Beast God transformation is limited to the ability to transform Orcs into humans, and it can also transform humans into Orcs, and it has no other special abilities. Moreover, due to the different body structures of Orcs and humans cannot cultivate the bloodthirsty fighting spirit of Orcs, and Orcs' bodies cannot operate the various secret methods of humans. After humans transform into Orcs, or Orcs transform into humans, their strength cannot be transformed at all, which is equivalent to turning back into a blank slate. A transformation technique that is completely worthless except for changing life forms. Even the Orc Assassin Alliance, led by Domitian, only popularized the cat mask, because the cat mask did not affect its own strength. It was a good auxiliary prop for the Orc Assassins, but very few people practiced a Beast God transfiguration. Domitian said, "The Beast God transfiguration is a very simple little spell." He was not lying. This spell was not more profound than the cat transfiguration. It was just that the beast goat transfiguration was much more complicated to practice than the cat transfiguration. It required a deep understanding of the body structure of each type of orc to ensure that the transformation was the same as that of the orc. Charlotte tried to understand the body structure of the 100 bears, the big bear tyrant and the bear honey. It took 5 or 6 days, and she was able to transform into a little bear man over 2 meters tall. After transforming into a red bear warrior, the bloody glory in Charlotte's body was sealed and could not function. Although the power became stronger, and bloody glory was never known for its strength, the body became much clumsier, and only the spirituality remained the same. Charlotte tried, but after transforming into a red bear, he never tried to transform into other kinds of orcs. He went around in circles and finally returned to the loyal Silver Pigeon Castle. When he appeared at the foot of Silver Pigeon Castle, countless residents in the city climbed up the city wall, waved their arms and cheered, and welcomed the return of the Knights of Favonius. Charlotte felt more at home when he returned to Silver Pigeon Castle than when he returned to Seagull City. He even knew many residents of Silver Pigeon Castle. Charlotte waved his hand while leading the Knights of Favonius into the city. Some of the soldiers of the Knights of Favonius came from Silver Pigeon Castle, and they repeatedly defended Silver Pigeon Castle and resisted the South Seraph Restoration Army and the Orc Army. Therefore, they had a very good reputation in the city. No one was afraid of the soldiers of the Knights of Favonius, and they were even more popular than the Knights of Silver Pigeon Castle in this city. After Charlotte left, only Doberman and Yellow Bear, as well as the other 3 knights, were left in Silver Pigeon Castle. After he came back, he took over all the affairs of Silver Pigeon Castle again and was very busy for a few days. Claire Breton's letter arrived at Silver Pigeon Castle again, hoping that he could organize another batch of supplies and send them to South Seraph, and asked him to let the other 3 knights come to South Seraph to participate in the war in addition to the Knights of Favonius. In Claire Breton's letter, Charlotte learned that Byron's army had not arrived, but the army of the Black Phoenix dynasty had invaded South Seraph, and the 2 sides were fighting. Charlotte sighed. It was still the early stage of the war. Most places in the Fars Empire had not been mobilized to participate in this war. Even life in Strasbourg was the same as yesterday. There was no major change at all. Shops were still open and residents' lives were not affected much. But as more and more countries participated in the war, Charlotte believed that the good days would soon be gone. He took Claire Breton's letter and pondered for a day before he began to raise supplies for the front line. At the same time, he also ordered the Knights of Favonius to use the developed business of Silver Pigeon Castle to start hoarding food and daily necessities, and began to select a site in Silver Pigeon Castle to build a large warehouse. In name, this large warehouse is used to store supplies purchased by the Knights of Favonius, but in fact, it leads directly to Machupi, Mostar Castle, and Cappadocia City. Charlotte also sent people to Mostar Castle and notified Dorothy, who stayed in Machupi, to start building a warehouse. The supplies put into the warehouse can be taken out from any of his maze-like cities. This is his preparation for the future. Because Claire Breton did not release the Spotted Deer Gwen and the Windwolf Bancroft, Charlotte could only let Dubin, Yellow Bear, and Anastasia lead 3 knights to transport supplies to South Seraph. After Dubin and his men left, Charlotte was left alone again. The main figures of the Knights of Favonius are Dorothy, Anastasia, Belissa, Doberman, Yellow Bear, Gwen the Spotted Deer and Bancroft the Wind Wolf. Now these people are not with him. In addition to the ordinary soldiers of the Knights of Favonius, Charlotte only has more than 1,000 orc maze guards. There is no shortage of combat power. After all, the orc maze guards have 9 extraordinary warriors. Not a few days after Doberman and his men left, the front line was in urgent need of help again. Claire Brittany asked Charlotte to send another batch of soldiers. Charlotte was a little reluctant to let go of the soldiers of the Knights of Favonius. Chinese military strategy says, a merciful army cannot be commanded. But he would rather not be an excellent military strategist than want his Knights of Favonius to die for a meaningless war. For Charlotte, the war in South Seraph is meaningless. But he couldn't refuse Claire Breton's request. After hesitating for half a day, he left behind 1,000 soldiers of the Knights of Favonius, selected locals of Silver Pigeon Castle as much as possible, led the remaining Knights of Favonius and the Orc Maze Guards, and went to the South Seraph territory in person. For Charlotte, he could protect his soldiers more if he went there in person. Chapter 258 New Novel. In the Principality of Behemoth, Charlotte could still feel peace and there was almost no war, but as soon as she entered the territory of South Seraph, she could feel the breath of war. The ladies of South Seraph originally only hated the Principality of Behemoth, but after the war lasted for so long, they no longer had any good feelings towards the Fars Empire. Charlotte's Knights of Favonius were attacked twice just after entering the territory of South Seraph. Even these 2 times, they were not the South Seraph Restoration Army. The main force of the Restoration Army was still in Fellendon, just ordinary local farmers. Charlotte is now considered to be strong and powerful, and he easily defeated these 2 attacks. After the battle, he neither killed nor released them generously, but incorporated them into the Knights of Favonius and tried to brainwash them, but the effect was not good, and people often escaped. Charlotte never thought that among the more than 10 quick-handed clerks arranged by Anne for him, there was a young man with a strong original spirit. While copying the novel for Charlotte, he was greatly impressed by Charlotte's story and also had the idea of writing a novel. When the Knights of Favonius entered the territory of South Seraph, the quick-handed clerk named Italo Calvino suddenly burst into inspiration and created a novella based on Charlotte. In the novel, he boldly portrayed Charlotte as Jonathan's illegitimate child, and wrote Hughes as a loyal knight who was dedicated to protecting the young master. The 2 jointly ruled South Seraph and Behemoth, established heroic achievements, and were rewarded by Emperor Julius Axel of Fars, one as a duke and the other as an earl. Although the bug in the plot of Jonathan's death was completely ignored, the overall story was smooth. After Charlotte got Italo Calvino's original novel, she also praised it greatly. With his experience of reading novels for many years, he filled in a plot of Jonathan setting up 12 trials, and gave Jonathan a younger brother, and forced the legend of Hercules and the story of the Lion King into it. The story is changed to Charlotte, who has passed the 12 trials and is about to inherit Jonathan's ambition. His brother killed him and framed Charlotte. Zalman is honored. He would have been forgotten in the long river of history, but because there were not enough characters, he was set to be Jonathan's brother, and he also had a new nickname Scar. Because he borrowed a lot of classics, his image is much more vivid than when he was alive. He became very cunning, with 3 strategies in one step, and every pore of his body was full of bad water and bad ideas. After several revisions, Charlotte decisively used this novella to replace her original plan to brainwash Lady South Seraph. Charlotte knew that most civilians in this world were illiterate, so she asked the quick-handed clerks to hold a copy and tell stories to Lady South Seraph. At first, of course, these South Seraph ladies refused to believe it, but every time they doubted, Charlotte would appear with a compassionate face and give these South Seraph ladies some favors, such as better food, and personally treat a South Seraph young man, limited to tying bandages, because he didn't have a medical skill package. This brainwashing novel was unexpectedly effective. The captured South Seraph ladies gradually became stable. However, because the story was so effective, the Behemoth soldiers under Charlotte were a little depressed. In order to take care of the emotions of the Behemoth people, Charlotte quickly launched the second version of the plot, giving herself a Behemoth mother. Although his mother was indeed a Behemoth, in order not to shame her mother, this character became Anastasia's mother. Baron Phile of Silver Pigeon Castle was awarded a small hat of a unique color that he had never had before. With the emotional feedback of the audience, this novel, which was originally written by Strasbourg fast-handed scribe Italo Calvino and revised by Charlotte herself, has been revised for several consecutive editions. The plot has become more and more perfect, and the brainwashing effect has become better and better. This story quickly spread in the South Seraph region. On the 13th day after Charlotte entered the South Seraph territory, an independent South Seraph Restoration Army came to surrender. Charlotte was overjoyed and cared for the leader of the South Seraph Restoration Army. After learning that the other party had to work after higher education because of his poor family background, he specially taught the orc transformation technique, the overback red bear warrior transformation, to this young man named Sebald. I don't know if this young man is really talented, but unfortunately overwhelmed by life. Sebald actually succeeded in practicing the overback red bear warrior transformation in just 5 or 6 days, and could turn a pair of hands into bear paws, thereby greatly increasing the strength of his arms. After this example spread, Charlotte's march was no longer hindered, and South Seraph women came to surrender almost every day. As for this matter, will it fail? Charlotte no longer wanted to think about it. Anyway, she would not really take over South Seraph and Behemoth. This question should be considered by the future rulers of these two regions. Who cares about Charlotte? Charlotte solved the resistance of Lady South Seraph, and the speed of the Knights of Favonius was greatly accelerated, and they soon approached the front battlefield. At this time, Claire Berdini and Abner Sumrei had been fighting with the army of the Black Phoenix dynasty for 7 or 8 days. They had no idea that Charlotte ran back to Strasbourg. If they didn't know, they would be furious. The front line was tight, and the people behind ran back to the capital for a vacation. Who can stand this kind of thing? Because the two knew nothing, the news that Charlotte personally led troops to reinforce moved Claire Berdini and Abner Sumrei very much. Both of them had no time to meet Charlotte, but just sent someone to pass on the order, asking him to capture a nearby small town. This small town is Interlaken, where Archduke Joseph was trapped and died in battle. The army of the Principality of Behemoth was completely destroyed here, with only 1 or 2% escaping back, and the rest were buried in this small city. Because of the Battle of Interlaken, 70% of the nobles in the Principality of Behemoth died, and many territories were in a state of no one inheriting them. For example, the Silver Pigeon Castle was occupied by Baron Fabali. The noble knights of the Black Phoenix dynasty stationed in the small town of Interlaken were not many, only 700 or 800 people. Interlaken had been destroyed in the last fierce battle, and the city walls were damaged everywhere. There was no place to defend, and the old continent had no habit of defending the city. When this noble knight group saw the Knights of Favonius, they calculated the number of both sides and retreated decisively. Charlotte entered Interlaken, and a thought came out of the diary. Charlotte Mecklen became the owner of Interlaken, meeting the requirements for arranging the 13th maze, and Interlaken was about to become a maze. Chapter 259, The First Battlefield Duel. To complete the maze of Interlaken, 1,800 new residents are needed. During this period, you are not allowed to leave this place. Charlotte immediately felt that this small town had completed the maze, which was the fastest city to complete the maze since he mastered Agmirus's labyrinth. However, Charlotte also realized that even the 3 times of infusing the power of the evil god Agmirus were also considered as mazes. The Silver Pigeon Castle and Machupi have completed mazes 3 times, Mostar Castle has completed 2 times, and Cappadocia City has completed 1 time. In addition to the 3 times consumed, the power of the evil god Agmirus has been infused 12 times. In the first maze, the small town of Interlaken obtained passages to Machupi, Silver Pigeon Castle, Mostar Castle and Cappadocia City. Charlotte decided to keep 3 times in case of emergency. For the time being, he did not want to obtain a passage to the real Agmirus labyrinth. After completing the maze of Interlaken, Charlotte commanded his orc warriors to renovate the town. Because of the last battle, the residents of this town were killed and wounded, and a large number of them fled, almost turning it into an empty town. Charlotte didn't have to work hard to renovate Interlaken. For convenience, he also demolished all the dilapidated and low-rise houses in the city. Anyway, the orcs had plenty of energy to divide the entire town into 5 districts and redesign all the houses. Charlotte was a math teacher in his previous life, not an architect. Of course, it was a bit difficult for him to design a house, but it was not difficult for him to learn from it. In his previous life, as a math teacher, Charlotte's salary was too low to buy a mansion, but he really watched a lot of short videos about mansions, such as Yibo talking about wine. Well, this is not about mansions. For example, Uncle AI who can afford mansions, Yefton talking about houses, etc. After his redesign, Interlaken really became like that. Of course, a warehouse must be there. While Charlotte was making a mess, the Black Phoenix dynasty sent out 3 knight groups to attack Interlaken. Although Charlotte's Knights of Favonius only brought elite troops, with only more than 1,000 human soldiers and more than 1,000 orc maze guards, the total number exceeded 3,000. You know, ordinary knight groups only have a few hundred people, unless they are super nobles or royal knights. The number of people in the Knights of Favonius is so large, although it may be because Charlotte does have the potential to explode troops, it has exceeded the normal knight group. The commander of the Black Phoenix dynasty dare not ignore such a strategic force. He sent out 3 knight groups, all of which are ordinary knight groups with hundreds of people, adding up to less than 1,000 people, mainly to hold Charlotte's Knights of Favonius in Interlaken and prevent them from participating in the frontal battlefield. Charlotte didn't know the other party's strategic purpose. He thought that these 3 knight groups were the vanguard, and the army would come in continuously afterwards. He was not even a keyboard military strategist, and he couldn't analyze the enemy's purpose at all. In order to avoid a tough battle, Charlotte sent out all the 3 knights when they were still not stable. The leaders of the 3 knights were all barons. They thought it would be an easy battle. The army from the Black Phoenix dynasty did not know Charlotte's reputation. According to their intelligence, the Knights of Favonius was still a knight group that had been transferred from the patrol army. Although they did not know how this knight group expanded to such a large scale, they did not care about it. Commanders with a little military literacy knew that temporary farmers could not form an effective combat force at all. The more people there were, the greater the logistical pressure would be, and the combat effectiveness would not be improved. In fact, this military common sense was indeed correct. It was just that the Knights of Favonius had already had some combat effectiveness after several battles, and Charlotte still had more than 1,000 orc warriors. These were warriors gathered from various orc tribes, and their individual combat effectiveness was very strong. When Charlotte led the Knights of Favonius out of the small town of Interlaken, the leaders of the 3 knights were humble to each other. They all regarded Charlotte as an amateur who didn't know military affairs, and believed that this battle was a sure win. In the end, Baron Bird of Regret of the Black Phoenix dynasty won the right to the first station. He led his knights and rushed out of the queue, shouting, "Captain of the Knights of Favonius, come out and fight." Charlotte had never fought such a single challenge on the battlefield. He had only fought on the battlefield. He took out the blue rattler with great interest and fired at the Baron Bird of Regret. He didn't even use the magic armor-breaking bomb, but the blood energy bullet. This blue rattler is a high-level extraordinary blood-sucking pistol. The upper limit of the power of the blood energy bullet can reach the 15th level. Charlotte's strength is not enough, so he can only compress the 9th level blood energy bullet. But he didn't expect that after one shot, Baron Bird of Regret's head exploded and he died immediately. Charlotte shot the enemy Baron dead, and suddenly had a feeling, has the duel not started yet? Baron Bird of Regret had never expected that someone on the other side would use a high-level supernatural weapon. The body fell to the ground, and the energy magazine of Blue Rattler had more than 300 energy bullets. This was friendly sponsorship by Baron Bird of Regret, and it was the condensation of his whole body's energy essence. It was just average in power. The upper limit of energy bullets depended on the person who compressed the bullets and the supernatural level. Charlotte could shoot Baron Bird of Regret dead, and his supernatural level was not high. Charlotte casually inserted Blue Rattler back into the bloody vortex on her left leg, and changed to the Knight's Spear Collapse Mountain. With one charge, she defeated Baron Bird of Regret's knights, and directly attacked the other 2 knights. The Dark Crow Baron and the Colorful Swan Baron of the Black Phoenix dynasty did not expect that the Regret Bird Baron would die so quickly, and hurriedly commanded the knights to counterattack. However, the first wave of attacks came from the knights of the Regret Bird Baron, and the 2 dealt with them quite mediocrely. Even Charlotte, a military rookie who was not a keyboard strategist, shook her head and then let the Knights of West Wind rush forward. Before the 2 sides fought, the formation of the Knights of the Dark Crow Baron and the Colorful Swan Baron was a little scattered by the attack of the fleeing soldiers. The 2 barons still wanted to turn the tide on the battlefield with their exquisite martial arts, but each of them was surrounded by 3 bear warriors, and at least 2 of them were mid-level extraordinary, and the remaining one was also a low-level extraordinary. After only a few minutes of fighting, the 2 barons were captured alive, and the knights under their command were completely defeated. Charlotte was worried that these fleeing soldiers would be reunited by the Black Phoenix dynasty, and she tried desperately to persuade them to surrender on the battlefield. It seems that many of them still ran away, but when cleaning up the battlefield, there were about 400 to 500 prisoners. Charlotte put these captives into a warehouse and transferred them directly to Machupi. Chapter 260, Continuous Fighting. Charlotte defeated 3 knights, but did not wait for the enemy's main force. She thought that the commander of the Black Phoenix dynasty was going to play some special conspiracy. She temporarily promoted the quick-handed clerk Italo Calvino and asked him to defend Interlaken City. He led the Orc Maze Guards and some members of the Knights of Favonius to leave Interlaken City and prepare for an ambush. Charlotte's military literacy cannot be said to be average, but it can be said that he has no military literacy. His tactics were plagiarized from the Romance of the 3 Kingdoms. Charlotte didn't know that his move scared the commander of the Black Phoenix dynasty, and he thought he was going to do something big. After all, Charlotte defeated 3 knights with ease, which has proved his strength. The Black Phoenix dynasty once again separated a knight group. This time it was a knight group from the royal family. Not only was it well equipped, but the leader was also a high-level extraordinary. Claire Brittany learned about the battle situation in Interlaken City a day later, and also asked Abner Sume to lead the Maple Leaf Knights to attack. The two sides mobilized their forces between 7 or 8 small cities, and soon a melee broke out. Even Charlotte encountered 2 knight groups. The strength of these 2 knight groups was much stronger than the enemies he had encountered before. Although Charlotte did not suffer any loss in the 2 battles, he also suffered 100 to 200 casualties, which made him feel very distressed. Charlotte was indeed not a qualified commander, but he was really a good commander who cared for his subordinates. After 2 battles, he found that the armies of both sides on the front line had been mobilized as a whole, and there were constantly knight groups interspersed, so he wanted to withdraw to Interlaken City and temporarily withdraw from the melee. But before he withdrew the Knights of Favonius from the battle, he encountered a royal main knight group of the Black Phoenix dynasty. After a fierce battle between the 2 sides, Charlotte found that he had moved to the rear of the Black Phoenix dynasty's front line and could not return to Interlaken City at all. When Charlotte was worried about this, several main knight groups of the Black Phoenix dynasty were also very frightened. They didn't know that Charlotte accidentally broke into the depths of the enemy's front line during the melee, and they thought that this bold commander Fars wanted to copy their retreat. Soon, a knight group desperately caught up with Charlotte's West Wind Knights. The 2 sides fought for more than 10 consecutive battles. Charlotte tried several times to kill the leader of this knight group on the battlefield, but the 2 sides fought 7 or 8 times on the battlefield, but no one could do anything to the opponent. This knight group is one of the main royal knight groups of the Black Phoenix dynasty. The royal knight groups of the 5 major empires vary in size, but they are all large knight groups with at least 50 or 60 knight groups. Among them, the main knight group is different from ordinary war groups and can be called the super elite of an empire. To be honest, even the Purple Goldfinch Knights and Maple Leaf Knights of Claire Brittany are not as good as the main royal groups of the major empires. Charlotte was able to fight this knight group head-on, and his opponent was also very surprised. The leader of this royal knight group of the Black Phoenix dynasty was a distant branch of the royal family. His name was Chloe Hadrian. He was talented and powerful. Before college, he had been promoted to Transcendent. After graduating from college, he was already a 4th-level Transcendent. He was over 30 years old this year, and he was already a rare high-level Transcendent. His pistol and spear skills were superb. He condensed the evidence of the 5 great knights and was a 15-level high-level knight. Chloe originally thought that in the Fars army, except for Claire Brittany and Abner Sume, no one was his opponent, so he was not afraid to fight Charlotte alone. But after several consecutive single battles on the battlefield, he had a thrilling feeling. Charlotte really had no martial ethics and had all kinds of tricks. Every time he used a method that was incredible. There were 2 times when Chloe almost thought that he could not go back home. Chloe once again caught up with Charlotte's Knights of Favonius, but this time, he did not launch an attack immediately, but let the soldiers rest for a while. His knights were constantly chasing and fighting, and they were almost at their limit. Chloe's personal adjutant prepared tea for him. This is the dietary custom of the Black Phoenix dynasty. Of course, their tea is not actually tea, but a thick soup with a lot of food added. No matter what the Black Phoenix dynasty eats, there will always be a tea on the table. He drank tea with a piece of wheat bread mixed with several grains and nuts, and occasionally frowned, thinking about how to defeat the enemy. Chloe's adjutant is a lady from a lower noble family. According to the customs of the Black Phoenix dynasty, this adjutant also has another use, which is the most trustworthy partner of the commander of the Black Phoenix dynasty on the battlefield. This adjutant lady had been marching and fighting for several days in a row, but she still maintained a meticulous hairstyle and an almost spotless military uniform. The proud bulge on her chest was even more breathtaking. Seeing Chloe frowning, she persuaded, although the commander of Fars is very cunning and has a group of orc-slave warriors, he is still just a mid-level Transcendent. The previous battles were all based on conspiracy and trickery, not real strength. I believe Mr. Chloe, you will be able to kill this man on the battlefield next time. Chloe nodded slightly. Although he had not gained the upper hand in so many battles, he still had the confidence that as long as he could see through Charlotte's various methods, strength would eventually become the decisive factor. At this moment, a messenger came running over and shouted, "The enemy commander Charlotte Mecklen is challenging us." He came out alone and did not bring anyone with him. Chloe hurriedly drank his tea, stuffed his wheat bread mixed with several grains and nuts into his mouth, and said, "I'll go meet him again." He picked up his spear and walked out of the barracks alone. Sure enough, He saw Charlotte standing alone in front of the two armies, quietly waiting for him. Chloe shouted loudly, "Charlotte, you will die in my hands today." Charlotte smiled slightly and said, "Chloe, this is not the first time you brag. This is not the first time Charlotte has fought with a high-level extraordinary. She has killed high-level extraordinaries such as Harriet and Zalman. But there are differences between high levels. Level is not the only criterion for measuring combat power. Charlotte was defeated by Hughes hundreds of times in the Dreamland. Before he got the red and blue rattlesnakes, he had no confidence in challenging Hughes head-on. But after getting the red and blue rattlesnakes, he became more confident in challenging Hughes. However, he has not met Hughes again yet. The Knight Commander of the Black Phoenix Dynasty is one of the more powerful opponents he has encountered. Charlotte was able to save the situation repeatedly in cross-level challenges with her light agility X10. The two sides exchanged a few words, and Chloe thrust forward, as if gliding close to the ground, with a spear in her hand without any fancy moves, and thrust horizontally. Chapter 261, Evidence of the Oath. Charlotte dragged Collapsing Mountain backwards, took a step back diagonally, and then shook her spear to counterattack. On the battlefield, the rapier was not a very suitable weapon, and Charlotte gradually got used to using the knight's lance. The spear of the Black Phoenix Dynasty was slightly different from the popular knight's lance of Fars, Baron, and Ingrima, and the spear technique was also very different. The spear technique of the Black Phoenix Dynasty was more exquisite, with many unexpected changes. In comparison, the spear techniques of Fars, Baron, and Ingrima were relatively simple and plain. Even the Baron's spear technique, which was famous for its changes like Shintai, was slightly inferior in terms of changes. Fortunately, Charlotte had the light agility technique X10, and every time she fought, she would beat the slow with the fast, dragging the battle into her own rhythm. Chloe pushed the spear horizontally, dissolving Charlotte's attack, and the spear in her hand shook 7 or 8 spear flowers, each of which was composed of 5 petals. This spear was exquisite and dense. Even though she had seen it many times, Charlotte still couldn't help but secretly praise it. He couldn't crack this spear technique, so he simply didn't crack it. He took a step back, waited for Chloe to retract her spear, and then struck back again with lightning. The two fought back and forth on the battlefield for more than half an hour, and neither of them could gain the upper hand. Behind Chloe, the flag of the Black Phoenix Dynasty was flying, the god of war was vaguely emerging, and a shadow of a hill was shrouding her body. She used 3 of the 5 knight's certificates, and her whole body was as hard as a tortoise shell. Charlotte didn't follow the path of the knight. The star battle spear transformed by bloody glory was the authentic swordsman's inheritance, and it couldn't condense the knight's certificate, but he had various means, often relying on speed, pulling a distance, and then shooting. However, the energy bullets in the blue rattlesnake he used came from the Baron of Regret bird, and the power was average, and it couldn't even break the protection formed by Chloe's health certificate. In the previous duels, Charlotte had already tested Chloe's spearmanship and guessed that the opponent also had the ability to deflect the devil-breaking armor bomb, so he deliberately did not use this bullet and used energy bullets to test. In this duel, he also used energy bullets at the beginning. Seeing that Chloe repeatedly used the proof of the hill to deflect energy bullets and would never deliberately target her, he thought to himself, it should be the time. After firing 2 shots in a row, he switched the blue rattler in his hand to the alchemical magazine and pulled the trigger. A scroll of documents suddenly appeared on Chloe's body. He reacted almost subconsciously, and the spear in his hand was raised. The spear blade rotated endlessly, wrapped around the shot of the devil-breaking armor bomb, and shook it out. The devil-breaking armor bomb fell to the ground, blasting a deep pit in the ground. Charlotte was greatly surprised and shouted, "You actually condensed the proof of the oath." Chloe glanced at Charlotte, with deep fear in his eyes. If it weren't for the proof of the oath, which could protect him and deal with all the plots and conspiracies on the battlefield, he would have almost died just now. Chloe didn't expect that Charlotte could fight so many times alone, and he always concealed the existence of the magic-breaking armor-blasting bomb and always shot with energy bullets. Just now, he fired 2 energy bullets first, and then suddenly fired a shot, firing the magic-breaking armor-blasting bomb. If he was alone, he would definitely not be able to react, and he would probably suffer a great loss. Chloe yelled, "Despicable villain, come and fight head-on, you farce pig, you only know how to fight on women, come on. Fight like a man, if you have the courage to fight me head-on, I can name my son Charlotte." Charlotte was too fast, and Chloe was very uncomfortable every time she fought with him. Now she finally broke out and cursed on the battlefield. Charlotte was a little embarrassed. He had used this trick to plot against Zaman and killed him with one shot. Although Zaman also condensed the 5 Knights certificates, namely, the Certificate of Honor, the Certificate of Courage, the Certificate of War, the Certificate of the Hill, and the Certificate of the Earth. But he was not a man who kept his promises, so he did not obtain the Certificate of the Oath and could not guard against the plot on the battlefield. Charlotte did not expect that the Certificate of the Oath would be so useful that she could not plot against him. All the previous plans were in vain. With his intermediate strength, he challenged a high level, all relying on his amazing speed. How could he fight with the opponent? As for Chloe's son, whether it was called Charlotte, he didn't care. His last name was not Mecklen. Charlotte put away the blue ratchler and switched back to the collapse mountain. He thought to himself, as expected, high-level extraordinary weapons need to be paired with high-level extraordinary strength. If I had a high-level weapon, each bullet would have the power of a high-level full-strength attack. I could compete with this guy for a day purely based on gunfighting skills, unless I find a high-level weapon to help me condense the bullets, but it will take a day or two to condense a bullet that is equivalent to a full-strength attack from my own strength. I'm afraid no high-level extraordinary is willing to do this kind of hard work. Charlotte and Chloe fought fiercely for a day until they were exhausted. They each returned to their camp. Chloe shouted angrily, "Charlotte, Mecklen is just a villain on the battlefield. He doesn't dare to fight me head-on. He can only run around and play tricks. I won't duel with him tomorrow. I'm going to command the army to charge." It was the first time for his adjutant lady to see Chloe's expression. Chloe Hadrian was born in the royal family. Although she was a distant branch, she still had a noble status and was one of the most outstanding young people in the Black Phoenix dynasty. Although she was not as talented as Zimmerman of the previous generation and Claire Berdini of this generation, she was still very famous and was known for her mild temper, perseverance and bravery. It was the first time for the adjutant lady to see Chloe swearing and losing her temper on the battlefield. She knew that she could not persuade her. After all, Charlotte was indeed too criminal. She could not think of a way to help her superior, so she could only comfort her gently. Charlotte did not have a beautiful adjutant. Dorothy was the chief patrol officer of the patrol army. She was his colleague, not his subordinate. Even if there was one, he wouldn't dare to take it. Although Anne was gentle and generous, Charlotte remembered that a senior named Goulon said, "There are many kinds of men, but women are all the same. I think my girlfriend or wife is different from other women, but I haven't seen it. Not that there is no one. There is no woman who doesn't like to drink vinegar. The most difference is whether the taste is strong or not." Charlotte didn't have time to think about these messes. He returned to his military camp and first activated Bloody Glory to restore his energy, and then began to consider the possibility of robbing the camp in the middle of the night. Chloe has the Certificate of the Oath, and can foresee the attacks and plots against him, but this thing shouldn't be used for robbing the camp, right? Although he is extraordinary, his subordinates are not powerful. I now have 9 extraordinary orc warriors. When robbing the camp, we will mainly fight in a group, and there is a high probability that we can kill him, although some of these orc maze guards will definitely die in his hands. It's a pity. Chapter 262, A victory built on sacrifice is not a victory. If it was Dorothy, Belissa, Doberman, Yellow Bear, Gwen the Spotted Deer, and Bancroft the Wind Wolf, Charlotte would never use the lives of these extraordinary subordinates to pile up a high-level extraordinary. Even if he was crazy, he would not do that. It was extremely stupid. If it was the Orc Extraordinary Guard, Charlotte would think about it for a while, but he finally gave up the idea because he really felt that a victory piled up by sacrifice was not a victory. Even though these maze guards were actually a kind of evil, he still couldn't make this decision. Charlotte has always admitted that he is not a qualified military strategist or a qualified commander. He just wants to lead the soldiers of the Knights of Favonius to survive this war and try to kill as few people as possible, and he doesn't want to make achievements. Every battle before was forced, and there were reasons for having to fight. But Charlotte didn't think there was any reason to let herself sacrifice her subordinates to kill Chloe. Although Chloe is indeed a great commander of the Knights, for Charlotte, he is not worth the price. Charlotte finally gave up the attack on the camp, and instead withdrew some of the soldiers of the Knights of Favonius, and took away all the baggage, leaving only the elite who moved quickly. This was a small experience he had accumulated after several pursuit battles. With elite troops pinning down the battlefield, the enemy would not dare to pursue, and the baggage could be safely retreated. Once the baggage was safe, the elite troops could leave at any time, and the enemy could do nothing about it. Charlotte fought and fled, making a big circle behind the Black Phoenix Dynasty army. Without his knowledge, the entire battlefield was driven by him. The main force of the Black Phoenix Dynasty had to fight head-on with Claire Brittany's Purple Arc Knights, and had to worry about fires in the rear. They were really in a dilemma. Claire Brittany took advantage of the situation and launched a fierce attack, forcing the main knights of the Black Phoenix Dynasty to retreat from the defense line, reversing the decline on the battlefield. Abner Sumai took the opportunity to follow behind and successively devoured 2 knights of the Black Phoenix Dynasty's vassal army. The fighting between the two sides became more and more intense. Charlotte didn't know what the situation was in the main battlefield. After all, he had already penetrated deep into the enemy's rear. He made such a big detour just to escape back to Interlaken, and didn't think of attacking the main force of the Black Phoenix Dynasty. Charlotte fought behind the enemy for almost 2 months. Every time he wanted to find a way back, he would be stopped by Chloe. Charlotte didn't know that every time he found the direction, it was the weak point of the main force of the Black Phoenix Dynasty. If he was cut in from the back, maybe the whole line would collapse if he didn't do it well. How dare Chloe let him go? Every time she tried her best to stop him. Charlotte had never fought for such a long time before. He felt exhausted physically and mentally, and he was not doing well at all. Finally, he got rid of Chloe's pursuit again. He wanted to find a place to rest for a few days and replenish supplies. He had plundered a lot during this period. Although he would write an IOU to the people of the Black Phoenix Dynasty every time he plundered, and explained that as long as they took the IOU to Mostar Castle and Silver Pigeon Castle, they could exchange it for centimes and foils, but every time he finished, he still felt empty. He always felt that it was not good to do so, but he had no choice for the sake of maintaining the army. Charlotte didn't know that while he was plundering in front, Chloe's army behind him was simply complaining. As a military blind, Charlotte had a very simple view that he could not leave supplies for the enemy, so every time he plundered, he would fish in a dry pond, and not leave a needle for the pursuing troops behind. He didn't have to burn supplies that he couldn't take away. The ability of the mental channel allowed him to unilaterally transmit supplies back to Machupi, Silver Pigeon Castle, Mostar Castle, Cappadocia City and Interlaken from anywhere. Although he couldn't take them back, he could ensure that they would not be wasted. Charlotte robbed so fiercely that even if Chloe, who was chasing behind, wanted to replenish supplies on the spot, she had no choice but to go to a farther place to gather supplies. This is why the Knights of Favonius were increasingly unable to catch up with Charlotte, because they were also facing a shortage of supplies. Moreover, Charlotte Mecklen's random looting had already caused an uproar in the court of the Black Phoenix Dynasty. I don't know how many politicians attacked each other for this, and even blamed the army on the front line. Charlotte was considering the next direction to turn, when a werewolf ran over to report and said, "Captain, the town of Iya is ahead." Charlotte was shocked. Half of his geographical knowledge came from his previous life, which was no longer useful in this world, and half came from his university studies, so he had long lost his way in this chaotic march. But Charlotte never thought that he would run to Iya town. Iya town is not a town, just like Shijiazhuang is not a village. Both are big cities, but Iya town is a city in the Black Phoenix Dynasty, while Shijiazhuang is a city in Hebei. The reason why Charlotte was surprised was that Iya town was already an inner city of the Black Phoenix Dynasty, not a border town. He did not expect that he would actually go so deep. What should I do? Have we already penetrated so far into the territory of the Black Phoenix Dynasty? Well, I heard that Iya town is a free commercial city with no garrison. I don't know if what a college textbook says is right. Charlotte's brain was still thinking, but the instinct cultivated by so many battles made him think first. He waved his hand and shouted, "Capture Iya town." His current Knights of Favonius has expanded to nearly 5,000 people again. In addition to the Lady of South Sela who came to join him, there are also a large number of Black Phoenix people. When Charlotte robbed, although he wrote an IOU, some people still refused to believe it. He was very generous and took these people with him. On the way, he would find a deserted place for those who were more troublesome and send them back to Machupi. This behavior was understood as brutal by the Black Phoenix people who boldly followed the Knights of Favonius. This led to a consequence that these Black Phoenix people who followed him became more and more obedient, because the disobedient ones disappeared. Among all the military skills, Charlotte was most skilled in reorganization. He put these people into various combat teams and was able to use them as if they were his own arms. With Charlotte's order, this expanded group of knights attacked the town of Iya. The residents of Iya, who had been living a stable life, were very confused when they suddenly saw the knights of the Fars Empire. They chose to surrender without even putting up a serious resistance. After occupying the town of Iya, Charlotte heard the message from the long-lost Irie. Charlotte Mecklen has become the ruler of Iya and has met the conditions for labyrinthization. Please collect taxes in Iya 18 times and do not leave until you have completed it. Chapter 263. Only the Knights of Favonius left. After the residents of Iya were occupied by the army from the Fars Empire, they soon learned what it meant to be taxed like a cow's hair. General Affairs Officer Naaman was a good official with a conscience. He originally wanted to play along and try to get a sum of money to let these people leave. At the same time, he did not forget to send letters to nearby cities, hoping that they would send troops to drive away this invader. However, he did not expect that after the Fars Knights entered Iya, they captured a group of young and strong men and said that they would take these people back to the Fars Empire. Naaman could only bite the bullet and persuade them. Unexpectedly, the leader of this knights was very reasonable and said that he could redeem these young and strong men with a head tax. And the tax was not high, only 1 drachma. The currency of the Black Phoenix dynasty, the drachma, is different from Fars, Byron, and Ingrama. The basic currency is not divided into gold and silver. They are all gold and silver coins, and the denomination is determined according to the ratio of gold and silver. About 3.2 drachmas is equivalent to 1/4. The Black Phoenix dynasty also had paper money, with a face value and purchasing power equivalent to that of gold and silver currencies, but Charlotte said that she did not want paper money, but only gold and silver drachmas. The residents of Iya town certainly did not want their sons, fathers, brothers, and husbands to be taken away by the Fars people, and they all paid taxes enthusiastically to redeem these young men. After collecting the first tax, Charlotte went around the city to capture children. Naaman had dealt with him once before, and knew that Charlotte was not cruel, so he came to persuade him to let these poor children go, but Charlotte still issued a child tax of 1 drachma. After capturing the children, Charlotte tried to capture women, the elderly, livestock, and furniture. After 7 or 8 days of tossing, he completed the maze of Iya town without the knowledge of all the residents. When the local armies of several nearby cities came to rescue, Charlotte chose to withdraw without hesitation. Shortly after he withdrew, all the property of the nobles, wealthy merchants, and farm owners in Oia suddenly disappeared, and the food stored in Oia was inexplicably reduced by 70%. Charlotte had just sent this batch of wealth and food to Machupi when he had a feeling that the connection between Oia and several other mazes was cut off. He knew that the maze was not omnipotent. The cities he mazed were also cities without extraordinary strong men, so it was the first time he encountered someone breaking the maze and restoring Oia. Although Charlotte was surprised, he did not stop at all. He had no shortage of supplies now, and he had roughly determined the direction, so he set off at full speed to Interlaken. This time the march was relatively smooth, and Charlotte returned to the front line soon. Chloe arrived at the town of Ia 10 days later than Charlotte. Wherever he passed, there were cries of people. There were rumors everywhere that Charlotte could collect taxes hundreds of times a day and plundered the city's wealth. However, as a member of the royal family, Chloe could only contact nobles. In addition, Charlotte's looting method left him with a very bad impression, so he believed the rumor. Chloe was furious and immediately led his troops to pursue, but this time, he could not catch up with Charlotte. Charlotte found a gap in the front line of the battle between the two armies and slipped through it calmly. After leaving for a few months, she finally returned to Interlaken. The small town was the same as when he left, because Charlotte attracted a lot of attention, and the front line was in chaos. The two armies fought fiercely. Miraculously, the small town did not encounter war again, and even hundreds of residents returned. Of course, these residents couldn't find their old homes. Italo Calvino, the quick clerk appointed by Charlotte temporarily, didn't understand war, but he was good at handling documents. He assigned houses to these residents and designed a set of techniques for assigning houses, the main one being drawing lots. When Charlotte returned, everything in Interlaken was in good order. He had just rested for 2 days when Claire Breton brought Ebner Sumri with him. Charlotte was very surprised and hurriedly welcomed the two to the city and asked, "Why are Mr. Breton and Mr. Sumery here? Is the war on the front line over?" Claire Breton sighed and said, "The war on the front line is not over yet, but the Breton offensive is over." Abner said, "Byron did not withdraw its troops, but continued to increase its troops. The Empire had to increase its troops in Fellenden. Originally, we were feinting to attack South Seraph to attract the Byron army to split up, but this strategic goal completely failed, so the Purple Finch Knights and the Maple Leaf Knights are leaving and continuing to fight in Fellenden." Charlotte didn't expect to wait for this news, and couldn't help asking, "What about South Seraph?" Claire Breton replied, "We can only give up." Abner saw that Charlotte was a little unwilling, and said, "This is a strategy. Sooner or later we will be able to recapture South Seraph." Charlotte wanted to ask, "What about the Principality of Behemoth?" But he was so rational that he didn't ask this question. This matter was not something that Claire Breton and Abner Sumery could solve. He pondered for a moment and said, "Can I ask to stay in South Seraph?" Claire Breton shook his head and said, "Your position is too low to be a military governor. Even I can't be a lord because of my low position, so you can forget about it." Although Abner didn't believe that Charlotte could do anything after the two main knights of the Purple Finch and Maple Leaf left, he knew that Charlotte wanted to stay in South Seraph to stop the war from the Principality of Behemoth. After all, the Principality of Behemoth was Charlotte's hometown, and it was natural for him not to want his hometown to be ruined by war. He smiled and said, "But there are other ways, for example, like in Behemoth, Claire Breton and I can appoint you as the general affairs officer of several major cities in South Seraph." Charlotte was a little less unhappy. In fact, he was not entirely for the Principality of Behemoth, and he did not want there to be another war in South Seraph. Although he did not know to what extent he could do and what he could do, it was better than doing nothing. Claire Breton patted Charlotte on the shoulder and said, "After we leave, we will need some supplies, and someone will go to Silver Pigeon Castle at that time. I will always remember this friendship, and I will not say anything more." Charlotte nodded and said, "I will prepare the supplies." Neither of them said who the supplies would be given to. But everyone, including Abner, knew where the supplies were going. Claire Breton smiled and said, "Don't be so depressed. Although we failed to complete our strategy, we did not lose the war. In addition, the rest of the knights were disbanded in the war." Claire Breton blinked and said with a smile, "From now on, in the Principality of Behemoth and the territory of South Seraph, only the Knights of Favonius will remain." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 264, Tacit War. Charlotte had only one thought in her mind: this is too dark. The Fars Empire wanted to directly merge the Principality of Behemoth and the territory of South Seraph into the Empire's territory, and also wanted to abolish those knights. Regardless of whether the Breton offensive had restrained Byron, these two goals were basically achieved. The South Seraph Restoration Army was in Fellenden, and the knights of the Principality of Behemoth had completely disappeared. Not to mention the knights of the original nobles, even the knights of Baron Feebly were completely destroyed in the Breton offensive. As for whether Baron Feebly would cry to his sister or what, Charlotte had no idea. In the next few days, Claire Breton handed over the defense zones to Charlotte one by one, and also handed over several other knights to him. However, he asked Charlotte to take away the two extraordinary people, Gwen the Spotted Deer and Bancroft the Wind Wolf, and Charlotte agreed generously. Charlotte naturally would not keep these knights anymore. He split them up and reorganized them into the Knights of Favonius. He also supplemented Anastasia, Dubin, and Wang Shuang with 800 combat teams. He also specially promoted the fast-handed clerk Italo Calvino and Sebald of the South Seraph Restoration Army, giving them 200 combat teams each. Charlotte originally planned that if Claire Breton's Purple Finch Knights and Maple Leaf Knights left, the Black Phoenix dynasty would definitely attack fiercely, and he also planned a tactic of fighting and retreating. However, he did not expect that Claire Breton would leave, and the main knights of the Black Phoenix dynasty would also retreat, leaving only Chloe Hadrian, who had been entangled and chasing him for 2 months. Chloe was mainly unconvinced. He felt that he was fooled by Charlotte, and he wanted to fight Charlotte Mecklen to the death in South Seraph to decide the winner. When Charlotte learned that Chloe had stayed, she immediately sent someone to deliver a letter, saying that the war was too terrible, and it would be better for both sides to cease fighting and stay until the end of the war. This was Charlotte's voice. He had been entangled with Chloe for 2 months and knew that this guy was very powerful. The knights under his command were also elite. Instead of investing a large number of soldiers and watching people die every day, it would be better for both sides to fight a tacit war. When Chloe got the letter, she cursed Charlotte for being a coward, scolding Charlotte from grandfather to great-grandfather, and tore up 2 copies of Charlotte's biography, which was the novel originally written by Italo Calvino, and challenged Charlotte to a duel. Charlotte was certainly not afraid of Chloe, but he was really not interested in fighting, so he replied with a letter, saying that the 2 sides had fought many times and there was no winner. It was meaningless to fight a few more singles. It would be better for both sides to practice hard, and whoever could break through the current realm would duel again. Chloe actually thought this suggestion was good and replied to agree. Although there were some twists and turns in the middle, the war did develop in the direction that Charlotte expected. The armies of both sides were confronting each other, and the commanders of both sides were practicing desperately. It was 99% similar to the tacit war that Charlotte expected. In addition to practicing bloody glory, Charlotte spread Charlotte's biography in the South Seraph region and even specially trained hundreds of storytellers. There was no such profession as storytellers in the old world. Usually, writers were part-time storytellers, but only the nobles had such enjoyment. He added an entertainment project and a new type of work to the civilians of the Fars Empire. With this nonsense novel, Charlotte's brainwashing of the South Seraph women went very smoothly. In particular, Charlotte spread the news that South Seraph would not levy taxes in the future, and with many loose economic policies, many South Seraph women gave up resistance. Charlotte didn't really care about collecting taxes. War was the easiest way to make money. Claire Bridini and Abner Sumai had no interest in South Seraph, and the empire had not had time to send officials here. The original South Seraph administrative system completely collapsed, and the entire South Seraph region was ruled by Charlotte alone. He took advantage of the war to seize countless lands, shops, properties, manors, and industries. He promised to sell part of them to the nobles of Behemoth, and he did not intend to break his promise, but the war income was also generous enough, at least enough to support the Knights of Favonius. In addition to supporting the Knights of Favonius, Charlotte had no administrative expenses. As for the future, he was not the ruler of South Seraph, nor could he become the Lord of South Seraph, so why would he care about the future? 2.5 months later, a delegation came to Strasbourg and gave him the same treatment as Behemoth, making him the general affairs officer of the 5 largest cities in South Seraph. Charlotte himself could not have imagined that after the appointment was announced, the entire South Seraph was filled with cheers. He, a temporary official who had only governed South Seraph for a few months, was actually loved by the people in South Seraph. Along with this delegation came a message that the Fars Empire and the Ingrima Empire had finally concluded an alliance to fight against Byron, the Black Phoenix dynasty and the Orc tribe alliance. Although Charlotte had some complaints about the fact that it took nearly half a year for the 2 countries to complete the alliance, she was relieved. This meant that the army of Ingrima might cross the sea to join the war and relieve the pressure on Fars. Charlotte sent the delegation away and thought that there would be some peace, but she did not expect that a big shot would come the next day. Grand Princess Guillaume came to South Seraph. Charlotte looked at the Grand Princess of the Ingrima Empire and was nervous. No, she was shocked. He could understand everything. Why did the eldest princess come to South Seraph instead of reading novels in Strasbourg? Princess May came with Miss Aurora Sumai. Charlotte almost forgot that Miss Sumai was also a member of the diplomatic mission. Princess May and Aurora did not bring a diplomatic mission, but a mercenary army. It was not quite accurate to call them mercenaries. Although they were hired in essence, they were actually a detective team. Coincidentally, they were the detectives of the Lima Detective Agency. This detective team escorted the foreign princess and the deputy envoy to South Seraph. They were very excited to see Charlotte. They were in Strasbourg and were more informed than Behemoth and South Seraph. They had known the new owner of the detective agency for a long time and were becoming more and more successful. Especially this time, they knew that Mr. Charlotte Mecklin actually knew the princess and countess of Ingrima. They were very glad that the former president Aubrey Teutonic Atwood sold the detective agency, and they were also very glad that they chose to stay. Charlotte had no time to pay attention to the members of his detective agency. He arranged for Princess May and Aurora to stay at the mansion of a South Seraph nobleman. He couldn't help but ask, "Princess May, why are you and Aurora interested in coming to the front line?" Princess May said calmly, "Because someone is going to Silver Pigeon Castle in a few days, and I have to go to settle some personal grudges." Chapter 265 I'm just born shy. Charlotte was shocked and asked cautiously, "How did you know?" Theoretically, Menelman's visit to the Silver Pigeon Castle should be a secret, but even the eldest princess of Ingriman knew about it, so everyone knew about it? Princess May said lightly, "The passage of your maze is very useful. I have been back to Cappadocia several times and met Menelman who was docked there for supplies." Charlotte was shocked. Princess May saw the shock on his face and said lightly, "The maze is not a very secret thing. Why do you look like you have discovered the biggest secret?" Charlotte was shocked. He knew that the maze was definitely not a high-end power, but he didn't expect that in the eyes of the Saint Order, there were so many flaws that Princess May could go to Cappadocia through the passage. Whether it was from Machupi or the Silver Pigeon Castle, it was a very explosive thing. Princess May's eyes showed a puzzled look and asked, "Or, do you think I found out that those 2 novels were actually written by you?" Charlotte was shocked. He was already shocked to the limit, and couldn't be more shocked. Princess May didn't say anything, but Aurora said, "When Princess May bought the 2 books in the bookstore, she asked the publisher and found Miss Anne de Brittany, and Miss Anne readily admitted it." Charlotte couldn't help asking, "Anne said it?" Aurora shrugged and said, "The author's name is Anne McLean. What difference would it make if she didn't say it?" Charlotte almost broke through the limit of shock again. He really didn't know that Anne actually signed the 2 novels with such an undisguised pen name. "Anne Macron, isn't this a confession?" Princess May said curiously. "Mr. Macron, I have to say that you are such a talented novelist. Why do you hide your identity?" "I have also read the book The Biography of Macron. Although the quality is not as good as the other 2, it mainly lacks in the polishing of words and details. It should be because it was written too hastily. The quality of the story is even better than those 2 novels." Charlotte thought to herself, "What a joke, that's Greek mythology and the Lion King." All his underwear was exposed by Princess May. He was no longer able to cover it up, so he simply didn't cover it up and said, "I'm just born shy." If the Earl of Brittany was here, he would definitely say, "Mr. Macron, you are born lustful." Shy? Can a naked man be shy? Even if the Earl of Brittany was not here, the 2 ladies who had read the biography of Du Wei and Prince Chen's love for each other had a thought, a man who can write such a shy novel, say he's shy, is someone insulting shyness? Charlotte didn't dare to continue talking about the novel, and asked casually, "Did Senior Menelman go to Cappadocia?" He thought this question would be safe. Then he had another thought, Princess May and Senior, why didn't they settle their personal grudges in Cappadocia? Why did they have to go back to Silver Pigeon Castle to settle it? Well, this matter should not be asked. Charlotte immediately realized that this question was not safe either. Princess May said lightly, "She said you asked her to go to Cappadocia. By the way, she also took your fleet away." Charlotte didn't feel sorry for those merchant ships. After all, if he left Ingrima, he would no longer be able to control Cappadocia. The fleet would sooner or later get out of control. And being taken away by Menelman was considered to be making the best use of it. However, Princess May's words also made him sensitively aware of one thing: Senior Menelman did not have a magic alchemy warship. If this senior had a magic alchemy warship, why would he need a warship converted from an ordinary merchant ship? Charlotte felt a little sad for this senior. In the eyes of ordinary people in the Fars Empire, Menelman had an almost perfect image. Charlotte used to be complacent about having such a big brother, but as his status improved, she gradually realized that this senior was not having an easy life. The impact of the Imperial Rose incident was profound and turbulent. Charlotte thought that this senior was powerful at first. After all, he was only a 41st class first-level clerk, but now he knew that the warden of Kilmainham prison was not a very important political identity. Now even Charlotte Mecklen has a political identity, the commander of the patrol army in Lucavero district, the leader of the Knights of Favonius, the director of the Political Affairs Bureau of Lucavero District, the Special Plenipotentiary War Commissioner of the Fars Empire to the Ingrima Empire, the Temporary General Affairs Officer of Mostar Castle, Bibury City, Seagull City, Silver Pigeon Castle and Ode Mountain City, the General Affairs Officer of Arcadia Port, Sedona City, Solvang City, Carmel Town, Interlaken City in the South Seraph region, the 25th level and 5th level General Affairs Officer. Yes, the South Seraph territory has been quietly changed to the South Seraph region by the Empire, and his general affairs officer of the 5 major cities does not have the prefix of temporary. If Charlotte were to travel through time, she would be in this identity, and he and Menelman would not know who would hold the thigh of whom. Of course, Menelman still has the Sumrei family and a bunch of supporters behind him, but Charlotte Mecklen has nothing behind him. Charlotte never regarded Anne as his political bargaining chip. Although he had gained a lot of political benefits from the Brittany family, and he did regard the vulgar marriage of a rich and beautiful woman as a life goal for a period of time, he would never sacrifice Anne for political benefits. For example, if Anne had a falling out with her father, the Count of Brittany, he would definitely not stand on the side of the Count for the so-called future, but would only stand in front of Anne, even if he would lose everything. Anyway, he was a time traveler and had nothing. Charlotte's brain became a little bit fuzzy because of the war. In fact, for a long time, he couldn't understand why Princess May came to South Sarenth. But he soon woke up. Because Princess May personally commanded his quick-handed clerks, and even called Italo Calvino, who is already the temporary manager of Interlaken City, from Interlaken City to Sedona City by the eldest princess. Do your best to urge the manuscript. Charlotte is not an online writer, nor an author in any sense. He doesn't know if the most brutal editor in the industry is so demanding, but he believes that there is no editor on earth who is so demanding. Charlotte's oral novel career, which was gradually delayed by war and cultivation, suddenly regained its brilliance. Probably except for sleeping and eating, the rest of the time has to be oral novels. Well, when going to the toilet, Princess May will not follow herself, but will send a clerk to follow. Chapter 266 Don't be too drunk in you. Chloe's training was the most diligent during this period, and his fighting spirit progressed the most rapidly. He had experienced the trials of war, and his fighting spirit had broken through the bottleneck. He condensed the Earth Certificate of the 8 Knights, which almost doubled his strength. He walked out of the barracks alone with full confidence, carrying a spear, and shouted loudly, challenging Charlotte. Charlotte's lips were dry from dictating, and when he heard Chloe coming to challenge him, he was overjoyed and shouted, "Chloe, little boy, I'll take your life right now." Before he finished speaking, Princess May pressed him down and said lightly, "I'll do it." Charlotte was surprised and said, "Isn't this bad?" But Princess May had already flown away and ignored him at all. The fast-handed clerk Italo Calvino next to him urged in a low voice, "Mr. Mecklen, don't waste time. Today, there is still a long way to go before the number of words set by the Grand Princess. If we delay any further, we won't be able to eat today." Charlotte sighed to the sky and continued to dictate the online article. He now regretted pretending to be cool on the battleship. If the novels of the old world are not good, then they are not good. Why did he show a face of contempt? Don't be too drunk. Well, this is also a sentence from a certain online novel. Charlotte suddenly felt a chill down her spine and thought to herself, "Don't tell the Grand Princess about this book. I remember the last part of this book. Is it finished?" Not finished. Anyway, I don't think the Grand Princess would be satisfied with the ending. If she thinks I'm fooling her, she'll force me to continue dictating. That would be really fatal. Chloe looked dazed, looking at Princess May Guillaume who fell from the sky, with only one thought in her mind. It's over. I'm going to die. No, the saints are so high and mighty that they don't care about the lives of ordinary people at all. Charlotte Mecklen has already fought to the town of Iya, but no saint has intervened. Why is it that when I come to the city of Sedona and challenge Charlotte Mecklen to a duel, a saint will intervene? Is he the illegitimate son of some great earl? No. Why am I not dead yet? Chloe was thinking about it, but heard Princess May's cold voice, saying, "Charlotte Mecklen is writing a novel these days. You must not disturb him while he is finishing his manuscript." Mr. Chloe Hadrian tried very hard to express his sincerity and hurriedly said, "Mr. Charlotte Mecklen and I have reached a tacit agreement on a war. I came here to challenge her only to enhance her friendship. I didn't know that Mr. Mecklen was busy with his creation. I will never dare to challenge her again in the future." Princess May was very satisfied. She stretched out her hand and flicked Chloe's head. With the power of the saint rank, she knocked him unconscious and returned to Sedona City. Chloe's adjutant had been following this duel in the barracks. She was actually quite worried about her superior. When Princess May appeared and showed the strength of the saint rank, the adjutant was completely sluggish. Her brain could no longer work. She was like a chicken held down by a tiger, stunned. When Princess May knocked Chloe unconscious, the adjutant screamed and ran out with a rapier. When she pounced on Chloe and found that her superior still had a heartbeat, She was too excited and fainted. To be honest, it was quite unbelievable that the leader of a night group and his adjutant were lying under the enemy's city, but it happened so openly. Charlotte really didn't know. He was busy dictating and rushing to finish the manuscript. If he knew, he would have to go out and stab the two of them, making sure that the two would be killed by different tricks. After more than 10 minutes, Chloe's men rushed out of the barracks trembling and moved the two back. Charlotte only had time to ask when she was eating, "How was Chloe?" A clerk with a straightforward personality said. His adjutant ran out, and then the two of them slept for a while under the city, and then went back. Charlotte was completely dazed, and her mind kept echoing, "Slept for a while under the city, and then went back. What are they doing? Are the people of the Black Phoenix dynasty so unrestrained? Did I miss the wonderful part?" He was a little unconvinced, and asked another clerk, who also answered, "Indeed, they slept for a while under the city." Chloe laid down first, and his adjutant ran out, originally holding a rapier, but when he got to the city, he lay on Chloe. These fast-handed clerks, like Charlotte, have to work hard every day to rush to finish their manuscripts. They are even harder than Charlotte. Charlotte only needs to dictate, and they're right every day, and everyone has calluses on their fingers. You know, this group of fast-handed clerks can't write 500 words a day in their normal office work. As a result, they were sent out by Annie, and each person started writing 10,000 words a day. They didn't go to the city wall to see, but just listened to the rumors spread by the soldiers of the Knights of Favonius, so naturally there were many missing details. The clerk with a more straightforward personality was afraid that Charlotte would not believe it, so he said, "They really lay under the city for more than 10 minutes. Charlotte thought to herself, "Chloe can't do it either. Well, he is practicing the royal secret of the Black Phoenix dynasty. It is indeed not as good as Bloody Glory, and it also improves endurance." Chloe dared to come out to challenge. "I'm afraid his cultivation has improved a bit. Fortunately I didn't go out, otherwise I really couldn't beat him. I've been busy reciting and neglecting to practice recently. I will finish reciting the 2 books in a few days, and I have to work hard to practice." After dinner, Charlotte began to narrate bitterly again. He always felt that the author of the 2 books should treat him to a meal. How many genuine readers did he get for the 2 in the Fars Empire? And there are die-hard fans like the Grand Princess of the Ingrima Empire. If he goes out to brag, wouldn't it be more impressive than Obama? Although the royalties were all pocketed by Charlotte. But this is not important. For a while, Charlotte even thought vaguely that he had traveled to a city that was not the old world, but a city that was reborn and famous for shameless plagiarism. Until one day, Princess May suddenly called him out, and without saying a word, she flew into the air. Charlotte asked, "Princess May, where are we going?" Princess May said lightly, "To Silver Pigeon Castle." "Menelman has arrived." Charlotte let out a long breath and said from the bottom of her heart, "Praise Senior Menelman." This was not a voice from her heart. This was a shout. Then he heard Princess May say coldly, "You are very brave." Charlotte realized that she was being held in the hands of Menelman's enemy, and she was in the air. Chapter 267, Charles the Lionheart. Not big, really not big. Charlotte was not very courageous, and what did this have to do with courage? Provoking the Holy Order is not something a wise man would do. Princess May didn't say anything else. While Charlotte was sweating coldly, she also began to reflect on whether she was too rampant. How could he say in front of Princess May, "Praise Senior Sister Menelman"? You know, the person who forced him to dictate the novel was Princess May. Isn't this a blatant passive sabotage? Princess May flew 100 or 200 kilometers, then landed gracefully and said, "Release your dark luxury." Charlotte asked, "Aren't we flying non-stop?" Princess May said calmly, "Menelman's strength should not be underestimated. I need to save my energy for the next battle." Charlotte obediently released the dark luxury and secretly complained, "Grand Princess, your endurance is not good. How far have you flown?" "It's not even as good as the endurance of a small ant." The two of them got on the dark luxury. Charlotte saw that Princess May seemed to be acting a little strange, but the Grand Princess was covered in a black robe, even her face was covered, and he couldn't see her expression, so he just pretended nothing happened and lay down on the seat honestly, even wanting to stick out his tongue and spit. He was exhausted recently. The Grand Princess is more cruel than a capitalist. When readers of Kittian Chinese urged the author to submit manuscripts, they still knew to leave some room for the author. The highest benchmark was the eagle who loved to eat chicken. Princess May basically required Charlotte to follow the standard of artificial intelligence. As long as the power is not cut off, just beep for me. Not a human. Charlotte secretly complained in front of Princess May, and felt very happy. After Princess May got on the carriage, she didn't say anything. At first, she looked at the scenery outside. After a long time, she couldn't help it and said, "Do you think there is something wrong?" Charlotte looked out the window and said, "I didn't take the wrong road." Princess May was silent for another half an hour, and then asked, "Are we?" Charlotte looked at the eldest princess strangely and asked back, "Are you hungry? Want to eat?" I didn't bring any food. Otherwise, I'll go buy some when we pass by a village later." Princess May took a deep breath and asked, "As an imperial princess, I shouldn't be in the same space with foreign men." Charlotte felt like a bucket of cold water was poured on her head. Only then did he realize why Princess May behaved strangely. Not only did he get on the carriage in a very familiar manner, but he also half collapsed on the seat in front of the princess, which was very unpresentable. Well, the old continent was still a feudal empire, and offending the royal princess could be punished by death. Charlotte was a little scared at first and did not stand up, but after a few minutes, she let it go and said, "It's like this anyway, Your Highness, don't worry about it. Anyway, there are no outsiders, and I won't tell outsiders. Let's do this." Princess May hesitated for a long time before nodding slightly. Charlotte suddenly remembered that Princess May had taken her to the room to recite novels many times, so why did she suddenly care about not being able to ride in the same carriage? This woman is so fucking weird, no wonder she is a widow, Charlotte secretly complained impudently. And in order to ease the embarrassment, she said casually, "How about I recite a novel for you?" "Well, write a new novel." Charlotte almost slapped herself when she said this. He had almost finished reciting the two novels. When he finished reciting them, wouldn't he be free from suffering? If he recites another one, how long will it take for him to regain his freedom? Princess May said calmly, "Okay." Charlotte decided to read a short one. He thought hard for a few minutes, chose a fantasy work that was not online, and began to recite it to Princess May. Once upon a time, there were 4 children. They found a big wardrobe at home with many clothes in it. When they were playing hide and seek in the wardrobe, they found themselves in a forest full of ice and snow. They met a lion. The lion told them that witches ruled the world and they were the saviors of the world. Princess May suddenly interrupted his recitation and asked, "Is this the novel you created based on the template of King Charles the Lionheart?" Charlotte was about to answer no, but then she realized that this classic fantasy masterpiece on Earth was actually similar to the life of the great and powerful man called Charles the Lionheart, the founding emperor of the Lionheart dynasty, one of the 5 great empires of the old continent. Princess May said calmly, "Don't publish this book in Fars, publish it in Ingrima. Remember to sing praises to the Lionheart King. Maybe there will be unexpected benefits." Charlotte didn't think there would be any unexpected benefits from writing a novel. He said, "You can publish these novels in Ingrima, as long as you pay the royalties." Princess May was very surprised and asked, "Can they all be published?" Charlotte nodded, and Princess May thought secretly, "Can the extra chapters of Du Wei and Prince Chen be published?" Okay. He is indeed a shy man. Charlotte didn't know that she sold herself out with her own hands. He didn't know that there was such a thing as an extra chapter, nor did he know about the book of extra chapters. When Anne was handling this matter, she also deliberately silenced the gunman and asked her to sign a letter of guarantee to permanently give up the copyright and never mention this matter. At the same time, she promised the other party that not only would she pay a generous reward, but also that she would pay an additional royalty of 1/10 of a centime for each extra chapter published in the future. The purchasing power of 1 centime is less than 20 yuan. 1/10 of a centime for each book is equivalent to 15% of the book's price. Many best-selling authors on the earth cannot get such royalties. Anne is not short of money. Yes, the ghostwriter Anne found was a lady. This lady also asked Anne to sign a guarantee letter, promising not to reveal that she was the original author. Well, the ghostwriter was more worried than Anne that this matter would be exposed. She deeply believed that this book had exerted her greatest talent, but she must not let anyone know that she wrote it. The ghostwriter did not expect that for the rest of her life, her royalties for this extra book alone would be as high as several écus every year. She lived to be over 90 years old, and her royalties only increased every year. She also kept her promise and never mentioned this matter. It was not until after her death that the 5th-generation granddaughter of the ghostwriter discovered that her grandmother had a mysterious amount of money every year. She checked the publishing house and revealed this big secret. Yes, Charlotte will be wronged for more than 100 years. Chapter 268, Letter from a Senior. Dark Luxury is indeed a good car. As long as it has been to place before, there is no need for anyone to drive it. 8 magic horses can pull the carriage to the destination. 13 dark luxuries have been built for more than 100 years, and there are few places that have not been visited. Every time Charlotte drives dark luxury, she will enjoy a high-end intelligent driving experience. When the wall of Silver Pigeon Castle appeared not far away, Charlotte breathed a sigh of relief. He did have a special feeling for Silver Pigeon Castle. After all, it was commonly known as a place where a battle had been fought. Charlotte was about to get off the carriage when she heard Princess May say, "Come on." Charlotte was about to ask, "Where should I get on?" As soon as the carriage door opened, Menelman's heroic figure appeared in the dark luxury. Charlotte almost got shocked again. Menelman sat next to Charlotte, facing Princess May. The two ladies were oblivious to the others. Just as Charlotte was about to push open the car door and slip out quietly, she heard Menelman say, "No need to leave. I just want to talk to Princess May." Charlotte thought to herself, "I don't want to hear a word," but her body stayed obediently. He was actually really curious, what was going on between Menelman and the eldest princess? Did the two of them look like they had a grudge against each other? Princess May whispered, "I spared your life in Cappadocia last time, but don't even think about it this time." There's still such an opportunity, Charlotte thought to herself. "Have you fought in Cappadocia?" Menelman said lightly. "If it weren't for Afars, and if Ingrima was Far's ally, I wouldn't let you go." A few words from the two of them stirred up a strong smell of gunpowder. Charlotte didn't want to be affected by the fight between the two female saints, especially since the dark luxury was his, worth thousands of acres, and it couldn't be destroyed in the fight. He quickly interrupted and said, "How about we get off the carriage first?" Princess May said, "No need. Even if I sit, I can take down this little goblin who is bringing disaster to the country and the people." Charlotte glanced at senior sister Menelman. Although this first rose of the empire did stir up countless storms, it was not related to the harm to the country and the people. After all, the little goblins who harmed the country and the people actually had a very prestigious identity. They were the queens of the great empire, such as Deji, such as Yang Yuhun, and a few of them were emperors, such as Wu Zhao, such as Catherine, and Cleopatra. Well, Charlotte couldn't remember what Cleopatra was called, but she could remember a few actresses in related movies. Menelman didn't sneer, but took off his gloves slowly with aristocratic temperament and threw them on Princess May's chest. Princess May's pink fighting spirit was looming on her hands, and she could make a shocking attack at any time. When Charlotte thought that the two female saints would take action, it would only take a moment to blow up the dark luxury, and thousands of it would be destroyed. She couldn't help it, so she stretched out her hand and pressed the floor of the carriage, shouting, "Collect!" The dark luxury disappeared instantly and turned into a ring. A slender hand reached out and grabbed the ring. Princess May said coldly, "Are you worried that we will break it? It's just a second-hand carriage. Is it worth being so bold?" A ball of pink fighting spirit blasted Charlotte out. Charlotte activated Bloody Glory, and in midair, he flipped over and landed on the ground. He felt that he was not injured at all. He knew that Princess May must have shown mercy because he had worked hard to memorize the novel. He hurriedly shouted, "This thing is quite expensive. I'm not a rich man, so of course I hope to live a frugal life." Menelman took a step forward and blocked Charlotte, saying, "Don't attack my junior. If you have the guts, come at me." Princess May's pink fighting spirit surged, and her feet slowly left the ground. Menelman was not to be outdone. He seemed to be carrying a piece of darkness on his body. In the darkness, there was a black moon, and he also slowly rose into the air. The two of them fought with each other, and their auras entangled. In the next moment, at least 7 rounds of fighting broke out. Charlotte was shaken by the aftermath of the all-out competition between the two saints, and rolled over several times again. Then he hurriedly activated the light agility technique X10 and quickly withdrew from the battlefield. He had not run far when he felt countless auras collide, and the overflowing energy pushed him to slide out 60 or 70 steps. When Charlotte turned around, he saw 2 balls of light rising into the sky, and the clouds in the sky suddenly exploded. He watched for a while, then turned around and headed for Silver Pigeon Castle. This kind of battle is quite fresh after watching it once. But after watching it too many times, it's just the same. When Charlotte returned to Silver Pigeon Castle, he was warmly welcomed by the residents of Silver Pigeon Castle. Every passerby would greet him, and almost everyone would ask him what was going on in the sky. Charlotte persuaded everyone not to worry and went back to Pigeon Castle. Originally, this place should be the territory of Baron Febile, and Pigeon Castle is also Baron Febile's property, but Charlotte wanted to be the owner here more than Baron Febile. Even the servants of Pigeon Castle, seeing Charlotte coming back, would take the initiative to help him prepare food. Charlotte ordered the chef to prepare a few more dishes. This time he didn't wait long. About half an hour later, Senior Sister Meneldman and Princess May came one after another. The two did not mention the battle, and they treated each other as if they did not exist. Charlotte relied on her strong psychological quality to survive this meal. After Princess May finished her meal, she said coldly, "In 3 days, we must return to Sedona City." Charlotte nodded hurriedly, and Princess May left gracefully. After Princess May left, Meneldman said to Charlotte, "Try not to provoke this crazy woman. After all, she is a saint and her mental state is extremely unstable. I need a batch of supplies. Please help me arrange it." Charlotte had already prepared this batch of supplies. He asked Meneldman and learned that the subordinates of this senior sister had already arrived at Silver Pigeon Castle. He arranged for someone to hand over the supplies to Meneldman's subordinates. Meneldman was in a hurry. After receiving the supplies, he left Silver Pigeon Castle without staying. Charlotte sent Meneldman away. When she thought that she could have more than 3 days of vacation, she felt comfortable. He would definitely not go back to Sedona City in advance. Just as he was about to ask the servants of Pigeon Castle to prepare a few barrels of beer, and plan to enjoy the night view and drink slowly at night, a steward of Pigeon Castle handed over a letter and said respectfully, "Miss Sume left this letter for you, and asked me to pass it to you after she left." Charlotte was also very curious. Why would Meneldman leave a letter for herself? When he pulled out the letter and saw the first line, he almost jumped up. Meneldman told him something big. Chapter 269 New Journey. I have gained the support of Zimmerman's old subordinates. We have nearly 100 warships, but without magic warships, we can never become a powerful fleet. I have drawn up a plan to attack St. Michael Island and seize the 2 magic warships of the Golden Goat Fleet. If you are willing to participate, you can come to Cappadocia. Charlotte couldn't calm down for a long time after reading the letter. He didn't expect that this senior sister had traveled across the ocean and had already pulled up such a powerful force. If Meneldman really got St. Michael Island, this senior sister would probably transform into a force that could not be ignored in the 7 seas. The Golden Goat pirate fleet of St. Michael Island has a magic alchemy warship, an ancient magic warship, and a saint. It is very powerful. Because it is powerful enough, once it is annexed, Meneldman will soar into the sky. He will no longer be the first rose of the empire, but a genuine imperial dignitary, not even inferior to Earl Ingram Asumai and Earl Sumai of Fars. Do you want to join? This is a question. Charlotte didn't want to make a decision for the time being. However, he also knew that since Princess May appeared, Chloe would never trouble him again. There would really be a tacit war between the South Seraph territory and the Black Phoenix dynasty. After all, the South Seraph territory was a place that was tasteless to both Fars and the Black Phoenix dynasty, and it was a pity to abandon it. Zis had already led the South Seraph Restoration Army to Faelingdon. Because of several wars, this place had become a region with no tax value, and it was not a strategic location. The Black Phoenix dynasty had no reason to capture it. Since there was no war between the South Seraph region and the Principality of Behemoth for the time being, it seemed that going to Cappadocia City was not an option. What Charlotte was thinking about was not St. Michael Island, but Cappadocia City. He was only 2 more times away from completing the 15th maze. Cappadocia City currently had enough warships, which was simply perfect. Although when more than 15 mazes were mastered, a passage to the real Agmaris labyrinth would be obtained. But if he doesn't finish, Agmaris will come soon. Charlotte's time is running out. However, this matter still needs to be carefully considered. Charlotte put away Meneldman's letter and started a 3-day vacation. 3 days later, he went directly from Silver Pigeon Castle to Interlaken City, and then set off from Interlaken and returned to Sedona City. The largest city and capital of the former South Seraph territory was Arcadia Port, but the battle line with the Black Phoenix dynasty was in Sedona City, so Charlotte's Knights of Favonius were stationed in Sedona. This is also the temporary capital of South Seraph, and Charlotte governed it quite well. As soon as he returned to Sedona City, he resumed the days of oral endorsement, but this kind of life soon came to an end. Princess May received a document from the Ingram Empire, asking her to return home as soon as possible. Before leaving, Princess May asked Charlotte to recite the entire legend of the Lionheart and asked him to send the sequels of the other 2 books to Ingram at any time, and then she took Aurora away. Before Aurora left, she only asked Charlotte to write to her when she was free, and never said anything else. As soon as Princess May left, Charlotte gave the fast-handed writing team a holiday, which received unanimous support and long-lasting cheers from this group of writing staff. Charlotte had a miserable life during this period. The days of this group of fast-handed writing staff were even worse than those of dogs. Charlotte instructed this group of fast-handed writing staff to send the manuscripts that had been rushed out during this period back to Strasbourg in batches, not all at once. He finally made up his mind to go to Cappadocia. Maybe getting a passage to the real Agmaris labyrinth would not necessarily lead to death, and maybe he could choose not to open it. But waiting for Agmaris to come would mean certain death. Moreover, Menelman had a fleet of nearly 100 warships, and there must be many old sailors, some of whom must have been to the New World. He could not go to the New World for the time being, but asking someone who knew about the New World was also a way. Charlotte arranged various affairs in the South Seraph region and the Principality of Behemoth, and sent several capable subordinates to several cities. He appeared in Cappadocia directly from Interlaken city with the help of the passage. Although there were passages between the mazes, Charlotte rarely used them. This was his first time back to Cappadocia after leaving Ingrama. When he appeared in the city, passers-by occasionally looked back and saw him. They suddenly burst into screams, and then their faces were filled with ecstasy. They ran all the way and shouted, "Mr. Charlotte Mecklin is back, Mr. Charlotte Mecklin is back." Soon, people crowded around Charlotte. Everyone who saw him seemed to want to reach out and touch him. Most people were in tears, obviously with deep feelings and nostalgia for him. Charlotte raised her hands and said, "It's me. I'm back. Where are Cruz and Zeman?" Someone immediately showed him the way and said, "Lord Cruz and Lord Zeman are in the city lord's mansion, and Miss Sue May is also in the city lord's mansion." Charlotte walked along the way, surrounded by countless Cappadocia residents, as if parading in the streets. Charlotte didn't think that he had done anything remarkable and didn't deserve the love of the residents of Cappadocia, but every time he said these words, he received even more enthusiastic cheers. In the end, Charlotte had no choice but to stop talking. As he walked along, he found that Cappadocia had undergone a new change since he left. The population of this small town had at least tripled, the streets were very lively, and there were many new houses around the city. When he arrived at the city lord's mansion, he made more discoveries. Countless people he didn't know were coming in and out of the city lord's mansion. When someone cheered, these strangers were confused at first, but soon they showed a sudden realization and looked at Charlotte with a bit of warmth in their eyes. Before Charlotte asked anyone to report, Menelman came out with more than a dozen men to greet them. Cruz and Seaman were among them. The two of them admired Menelman very much and showed respect in their eyes. They were even more enthusiastic when they saw Charlotte. They stepped out of the crowd and saluted respectfully. Menelman's face was slightly tired, and it seemed to ease a little when he saw Charlotte. When Charlotte entered the city lord's mansion, Menelman asked the rest of his men to disperse, leaving Charlotte alone, and said, "I have planned many ways, and I have fought with the Golden Goat fleet of St. Michael Island several times, with both sides winning and losing. The only way now is to cooperate inside and outside, but I don't have any insiders on St. Michael Island, so someone needs to sneak in." Charlotte asked, "Doesn't anyone know me on St. Michael Island?" Menelman smiled and said, "No, there are quite a lot of people who know you. You don't know how famous you are." Chapter 270 The Blood Oath of the Eight Orcs. Charlotte asked doubtfully, "How can I get in?" Menelman said, "In a few days, a slave ship will enter St. Michael's Island. There will be orc slaves on board." Charlotte asked, "Then what?" Menelman said, "Don't you know the beast transformation technique?" Charlotte was shocked again and asked, "Senior, how do you know this?" Since Menelman knew that he knew the beast transformation technique, Charlotte didn't think it was necessary to hide it. But Charlotte was very curious. Menelman was far away in the sea, so how did he know that he knew the beast transformation technique? Menelman smiled faintly and said, Domitian turned out to be his subordinate. He thought the Byron people were unreliable, so he fell out with the other orc tribal leaders and took some orc assassins to the sea to join me. When the orc coalition besieged Strasbourg, Domitian was forced to go back by the orc elders council with the orc blood oath. After the great defeat, when he met you, he thought of letting you disguise yourself as an orc slave to sneak into St. Michael, so he taught you the Beast God transfiguration. Charlotte was stunned for a moment and asked, "So," Menelman said, "he didn't go to assassinate you, he just brought my greetings." Charlotte finally understood why this old leopard man had mixed in with the orc maze guards. Was it for this reason? Menelman smiled and said, "Domitian said you are very interesting and very suitable to sneak into St. Michael, so I scared you." Charlotte remembered that the old leopard man said before leaving, "You must practice the Beast God transformation technique well. When I come back next time, if you have practiced well, I will take you to do a big thing." It turned out that Domitian was talking about this big thing. He was a little reluctant, as being an insider never ended well, so he said, "Senior, I am too shy and not good at disguising myself. I am afraid that I will ruin your plan." Menelman said, "Domitian also told me that if you are willing to be an insider, he can solve the crisis of Agneris." This time, Charlotte was not surprised. He was silent for a while and asked, "Does he know the evil god of the labyrinth very well?" Menelman said, "Domitian once went to the New World and built a labyrinth. He wanted to build a passage between the two continents. If he succeeded, it would definitely be very convenient, but he failed." Charlotte nodded and said, "I am willing to help you take over St. Michael's Island." Menelman whispered, "Thank you." After a moment of silence, the first rose of the empire said lightly, "There are very few people who can help me. Among those who are willing to help me, you are the most special. If I can get through this difficult time, I will never forget today, when a little brother ran around for me." Charlotte accepted the offer without hesitation and said in a deep voice, "Senior, I also need a copy of the bloodthirsty fighting spirit secrets of the orcs." Menelman smiled brilliantly and said, "I have prepared it for you a long time ago." The bloodthirsty fighting spirit of the orcs is said to be a secret method taught to the orcs by the eternal and illusionary dragon, one of the 9 righteous gods. It is suitable for orcs of every race, but the bloodthirsty fighting spirit cultivated by orcs of different races is completely different. The fighting spirit of the orcs is similar to the extraordinary night path of humans. But when the bloodthirsty fighting spirit reaches the 10th level or above, it will not condense the knight's certificate, but will conclude the 8 orc blood oaths with nature, to inherit the bloodline, never give up partners, never violate the covenant until death, swear to defend the faith until death, fearless self-sacrifice, fearless of a battle that must be fought to the death, compassionate and cherish life, and respect the natural cycle. Domitian had to participate in the siege of Strasbourg because of the 8 orc blood oaths that never violate the covenant until death. The blood oath of the 8 orcs is the source of the orcs' power. Once violated, the blood oath collapses, and the power will drop directly, with a high probability that it will never recover. Charlotte has never thought about practicing bloodthirsty fighting spirit, so although bloodthirsty fighting spirit is not a secret among orcs of all races, he really hasn't found a copy to take a look. Menelman handed Charlotte a wax-sealed parchment scroll and said, "This is something that Domitian left for you. When the eternal and illusionary dragons taught the secret method was recorded in an original secret book. It is said that there is a certain probability of facing this righteous god and gaining the favor of the god." Charlotte was quite wary of things that could summon gods, but thinking that the righteous gods might be different from the evil gods, she still took the original secret book. He took on the task and calmed down. He asked, "Senior, what should I do now that I have infiltrated St. Michael Island?" Menelman said, "You have 3 tasks. First, try to spread the news. We need to know the truth about St. Michael Island. Second, assist the internal resistance forces in St. Michael. Although we have no insiders in St. Michael, they are not united internally. It is said that there is an organization called the Golden Deputy Goat. Try to contact them. Third, find ways to infiltrate the prison on St. Michael Island. 3 saints are in prison there. As long as they are released, St. Michael Island will inevitably be in chaos. As long as there is a flaw in St. Michael Island itself, I will command the fleet to attack with all my strength." The owner of St. Michael Island once dueled with that man in a one-on-one duel, and the result was a draw. However, he was still young at the time, and his strength may not be stronger than mine now. But just in case, I prepared 3 saints for the owner of the Golden Goat Fleet. I believe he will win anyway." Charlotte was greatly surprised to hear about the 3 saints. She originally thought that senior sister Menelman was not in a good situation, but now it seems that she underestimated the first rose of the empire. Under such a difficult situation, she was able to recruit saints to help her. She is simply a female owl. Menelman continued, Their magic alchemy warship came from Fars. It originally belonged to Duchess Misu and was the flagship of the Northern Fleet. As for how it ended up on St. Michael Island, no one knows the reason, but the most powerful thing about St. Michael Island is the ancient magic warship and St. Michael Island itself. They all come from the ancient kingdom of St. Michael. I don't know what secrets they have. If you can find out the secrets of the ancient magic warship and St. Michael Island itself, it will also be helpful for us to capture this island. Charlotte remembered all these things in her heart. He talked with Mendelman for several hours and was arranged by Mendelman to stay in the city lord's mansion. His original room was occupied by the senior. Fortunately, Charlotte didn't care much about it and slept well after changing rooms. After a day's rest, Charlotte also had to make some preparations to sneak into St. Michael Island. He was going to St. Michael Island, and many weapons could not be carried. Collapse Mountain and Unicorn Eagle could only be sent back to Machupi. He only brought a silver rhino, red and blue rattlesnake, blood rose and withered rose. Yes, there was also blood spirit rhino. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 271, Infiltrating a Slave Ship. Many of Charlotte's early weapons have now been discarded. For example, the second-hand magnum hand shuttle and blood-sucking hand axe that came with him at the beginning, and the magic alchemical staff that was later made with a large amount of money. There are also some good equipment that Charlotte has never really used, such as the assassin's dagger, the 2 magic gun bags in the form of fingerless gloves, the crystal bottle and the worm bag obtained in Cappadocia City, and the extraordinary knight's spear obtained by killing Zalman. Originally, the assassin's dagger also had anti-space properties and was a good stealth weapon, but Charlotte had already cultivated it into colorless blade, which is her own ability and is more convenient to use than equipment. The magic gun bag is a space equipment, and space equipment has a great disadvantage, that is, they cannot be hidden. Once the body is searched, they can no longer be hidden, so they cannot be carried. When Charlotte checked her extraordinary items, she remembered that there were still 3 extraordinary items that were not in her hands. The dark luxury was taken away by Princess May, and Charlotte did not dare to ask for it. The lion Maru, whale killer, was still in the hands of Sophia Galanid, and she would have to ask for it back later. The silver knight was in Billis's hands. This extraordinary item could be taken back at any time, but it was useless for him to take it back. In addition to weapons, Charlotte also had to improve his own strength. He had fought fiercely with Chloe in the South Seraph region, and practiced every day. Bloody glory had accumulated to an extremely solid level. All the practice systems in the old continent determined the level of extraordinary people according to the energy intensity. Only the bloody glory created by Protagoras was divided into levels according to the number of bloody vortexes opened in the early stage. The level set by Protagoras is not accurate. After all, most vampires only open 1 bloody vortex. In fact, many people who practice bloody glory only open 1 or 2 bloody vortexes, but the accumulated blood energy is strong enough, and they will still be regarded as mid-level or even high-level extraordinary people. Charlotte has now opened 9 bloody vortexes, but in fact, he has transformed bloody glory into star battle energy, which is far more than the 9th level, and even more than the 10th level. He has entered the 11th level and is not far from the high-level extraordinary. Bloody glory itself is unlikely to continue to improve in a short period of time, but Charlotte wants to cultivate the magic flame horse ability in these few days. His Adonis secret method, every step forward, will delay the arrival of Karnstan. Now there are more than 2 months before Karnstan's arrival. If he can cultivate the magic flame horse, it can at least be delayed for another 2 or 3 months. The magic flame horse has almost no physical form. It can walk on any form of ground, including hills, swamps and water, and can even rush through a sea of fire. It is an ideal mount. After Charlotte lost the dark luxury, he was very eager for the magic flame horse, but this mission raised his desire for the magic flame horse to a higher level. The magic flame horse can run on the water, and can run as fast as lightning even on the sea. It is a good helper for escaping. To sneak into St. Michael Island. Charlotte's biggest need is to ensure his own life, and the magic flame horse is naturally a great helper for saving his life. Charlotte has been working hard to practice the secret method of Adonis in the next few days, and even temporarily gave up the tempering of other secret methods of bloody glory. However, the efforts of these few days are obviously not enough to break through a supernatural power. When Mecklenburg informed him that the slave ship had arrived at the designated sea area, Charlotte could only regretfully board a merchant ship prepared for him and leave Cappadocia. The plan specified by Mecklenburg was quite simple. When the merchant ship approached the slave ship, it would try to ask for help under the pretext that it had lost fresh water in the storm. Regardless of whether the slave ship would agree or not, it would be held up for a while, which was enough time for Charlotte, a supernatural being, to sneak into the slave ship. This plan was simple, but also quite practical. 5 or 6 days after the merchant ship Charlotte was on left the city of Cappadocia, it saw a large ship painted with black seagulls on the sea. As the merchant ship was about to approach, the large ship painted with black seagulls fired shells continuously. Although they were just ordinary shells, they also scared the people on the merchant ship. In order to cover up this action, the people on the merchant ship did not know about this plan. They knew that they had to approach the slave ship, but the large ship painted with black seagulls had fired cannons, so how could the merchant ship dare to approach again? The merchant ship hurriedly turned its bow and fled in a hurry. The large ship painted with black seagulls chased for a while, and then gave up and sailed back to St. Michael's Island. When the two ships were chasing each other, Charlotte did not attack, but jumped into the sea. With her extraordinary strength, she dived from the sea to the bottom of the slave ship, activated the colorless blade, and grabbed the bottom of the ship. Charlotte attached herself to the pirate ship, and waited for the pirate ship to turn around and sail back to St. Michael Island. Then she used her skills and quietly climbed onto the ship. This was just an ordinary pirate ship, and there were no extraordinary people on board. Charlotte relied on the light agility X10 to move freely on the ship. No one could detect a supernatural person who was proficient in light agility. This slave ship had about 100 crew members, and the slaves transported were all in the lower cabin. The lower cabin was of course very narrow and stuffy, and it was very unbearable. Charlotte did not go down to suffer in advance, but hid in a secret place on the ship. A few days later, he learned from the crew on the ship that it was only half a day's sail to St. Michael Island. Then he performed the Beast Scout transformation spell and transformed into a thin red bear boy with a back of only 2 meters. He did not need to do anything, but just showed his face in the bottom cabin. He was thought to be an orc slave who escaped from the bottom of the cabin by several crew members. He was held down on the spot and taken back to the bottom cabin. As soon as he was stuffed into the bottom cabin, Charlotte almost vomited. The smell here was really bad, but what was worse was that the space was too narrow. The orcs could not stand up straight, and even couldn't raise their heads when sitting. Many orc slaves had dull eyes and became numb under such torture. Charlotte couldn't stand this kind of human trafficking, but he also knew that this was not the time for him to be righteous. He could only wrong himself and curl up like other orcs. Originally, Charlotte was a little reluctant to sneak into St. Michael's Island, but when he saw these orc slaves, he suddenly did not regret agreeing to this matter. Charlotte curled up into a ball, unable to do anything else, so he slowly practiced a bloodthirsty fighting spirit method. Although he could recover his strength as long as he returned to his human form, it would be helpful to have a little more combat power in the orc form. He looked at these orc slaves who were like livestock, and thought of these slave traders who also sold humans in this way. He secretly swore that as long as he could get out, he would definitely destroy St. Michael's Island and make the slave trade extinct in the giant whale sea. Chapter 272 New member of the Pirates. Charlotte has received modern education and always believes that it is not certain specific groups of people who are evil, but certain morally corrupt behaviors. Humans have come out of the world of eating raw meat and drinking blood, and have experienced the cruel elimination of nature, and gradually developed feelings such as shame, morality, dignity, love, and compassion. This is civilization, but also shackles. Slave traders do not have any noble sentiments. They sell orcs and humans, and can sell natives and nobles in the New World. There may not be no slave traders who sell citizens of Fars and Ingrima, but he has not encountered them yet. This is a sinful industry. It should be violently banned. Charlotte tried his best to eliminate distracting thoughts. After all, in this environment, the red bear boy he transformed into was considered thin in the bear clan, but he was taller than humans, which was very uncomfortable. In this state, he could only practice bloodthirsty fighting spirit for a while and empty his brain. In the state of practice, He would ignore the harsh environment outside, which would make him feel a little better. Bloodthirsty Tao Qi is the same as human Tao Qi, and it needs to condense power seeds. Power seeds are the condensation of vitality. When Charlotte was in Behemoth National Academy, he practiced Lamia breathing for a period of time, also known as water fairy breathing. When practicing this breathing method, it can replace sleep and master water, but he did not succeed in practicing it. Charlotte did not think that practicing bloodthirsty Tao Qi would be much different from before, but when he sneaked into the practice, he only felt that the lively vitality in his body was agitated and constantly gathered in the lower abdomen. The lower abdomen gradually became hot, as if a small ball of charcoal was lit, making Charlotte's whole body warm. Even in the dark and humid bottom cabin, the bare hair on his body was not so wet. In the orc state, due to the different body structure, bloody glory was in a sealed state, but Charlotte's power seeds condensed by practicing Lamia breathing in the National Academy in his early years had been ignored for many years because he could not break out of the cocoon. At this time, it suddenly emerged, and then in the next second, it suddenly broke and merged into the lower abdomen. At first, Charlotte thought that after years of hard work, she finally waited for the seed of power to break out of the cocoon. But the seed of power condensed by Lamia breathing technique was completely broken. Charlotte recalled the past of herself and couldn't help but sigh. This was a complete farewell to the past. Even the last trace of the former Charlotte Mecklen disappeared from this world. Although this essence of life was not strong, it was at least a result of Charlotte Mecklen's years of hard practice. After it flowed into the lower abdomen, it combined with the life force condensed by the bloodthirsty fighting spirit and quietly gave birth to a small seed. The formation of this seed was like an extra switch in the body, which could control the convergence of life force or unrestrained. Charlotte was experiencing this new feeling of practice when she heard someone shouting, "Humble slaves, come out quickly, if you don't come out, you will die forever down there." Charlotte pulled herself together and was the first to get out of the bottom cabin. The dazzling sunlight made him squint his eyes. After a while, he got used to the light outside. One after another, orc slaves came out of the bottom cabin. The crew of the slave ship kept counting. After a while, someone went down and dragged out a dozen dead bodies, and threw them directly into the sea without even taking a second look. Charlotte noticed that the horizon ahead was a very attractive island. It was extremely high, like a small mountain on the sea. The entire mountain was built into a castle. There were alchemical cannons in every direction, and the black muzzles rushed to the surroundings. There were nearly 100 merchant ships docked around this island, half of which were slave ships. In addition to the orcs, most of them were natives of the 3 islands of Ingrima, and a very small number of them were natives from the New World. The natives of the New World were generally high-priced goods. These slaves would be sold in different directions. For example, the natives of the New World would definitely be shipped to the 5 empires. Only empires like Fars and Ingrima had wealthy people who could consume such high-end goods. The natives of the 3 islands of Inglima basically will not be sold back to the 3 islands of Inglima. They will only be transported to the mainland and sold to Fars, Byron, etc. A small part will also be sold to the New World. The direction of the sale of orcs is all the New World. The major empires of the old continent will only dislike that there are too many orcs. Where will they buy such things? Charlotte was born in another world and received education in another world. He cannot accept this naked evil trade. But he is still powerless now. This slave ship called all the orc slaves on the deck just to throw the dead orcs in the bottom cabin into the sea. The sailors on the ship called a few orcs out, carried a large bucket of seawater, washed the bottom cabin, and stuffed the orc slaves back. Soon the slave ship sailed into St. Michael's Island. Charlotte and others were transferred from the ship to a hardware house. After staying there for a long time, a man wearing a colorful shirt and dyed shorts that pirates liked very much came to choose slaves. Charlotte was tall and looked young, so he was quickly picked out. He was a little worried that he would be chosen by other slave traders, but he soon stopped worrying. Charlotte and the hundreds of slaves who were picked, some of whom were orcs, but most of them were ordinary humans. They were forced to climb the walls of St. Michael's Island and were assigned heavy work. Someone was watching them carry various materials. Charlotte looked strong enough, so she was assigned to carry stones and repair the walls. Charlotte had never done such rough work in her 2 lives, but now she had a different identity, so she could only bear the humiliation, slowly circulate the power seeds, carry the stones, and work slowly. At night, someone made a bucket of paste, Who knew what it was made of, and it smelled bad, for the group of people working. The group of slaves had been starving for a long time, so they rushed over and ate it in a mess. Charlotte took the opportunity to look around. When he saw a pirate sleeping soundly in a corner of the city wall, he thought to himself, here comes the chance. He slid over slowly, stretched out his hand and pushed the pirate down. At the moment when the pirate was about to fall off the city wall, he suddenly reached out and grabbed the other's wrist, shouting, "Help him, someone has fallen down." The unlucky pirate who was pushed off the city wall by Charlotte in his sleep had been awakened long ago. He screamed and showed a look of horror on his face, shouting, "Don't let go." Several pirates nearby noticed that something happened here, and they all ran over and grabbed the pirate who fell off the city wall. Charlotte looked timid and pretended to go to eat. He was stopped by a small pirate leader, who looked him up and down and said, "I just happen to be short of people in my team, come with me." Chapter 273 The Pirates' Daily Private Fights. Although Charlotte's method was a bit crude, it was effective immediately. In less than a day, he was upgraded from a slave to a pirate minion. The pirates on St. Michael's Island originally came from all kinds of backgrounds, and there were also many orcs. He was not noticeable at all when he mixed in with them. However, this was not the prison army or the patrol army, and no one gave him weapons for free. He could only pick up a branch and hold it in his hand, which made him look a bit like a bear. Soon, the pirates and slaves on this section of the wall all knew this little bear man who had just joined the Golden Goat Pirates. All the slaves knew that this little bear pirate was also a slave, so they treated everyone very well and even worked hard to promote several small projects to improve the lives of slaves. All the pirates also knew that this little bear pirate was not only diligent, but also had a very good brain. He often gave everyone some tricks, and every time he solved the problem just right, and made everyone's life easier. This was the first time that Charlotte had traveled through time and space and used all her skills to rebuild her social relations. It has been 7 or 8 days since he sneaked into St. Michael Island. After Charlotte finished his work, he found a deserted place and secretly practiced bloodthirsty fighting spirit for a while. He actually wanted to practice bloody glory, but he didn't dare to risk restoring his original identity. He could only use bloodthirsty fighting spirit to hone his spirituality. Charlotte's spirituality is also the best among the high-level extraordinary people. With a high enough spirituality, he will practice various secret methods very quickly. Although he didn't face the evil god directly and get the blessing, he was still at the level of ordinary genius. Recently, the power seeds condensed by bloodthirsty fighting spirit have become more and more scorching. Even if he has worked for a day, as long as he practices for a while, the heat waves emitted by the power seeds will still restore his body to its original state. Charlotte took a deep breath and was about to use bloodthirsty fighting spirit for the second time. Suddenly, there was a gust of wind behind his head. He hurriedly turned his head and a black iron rod passed over his head, almost smashing his head. Charlotte had never been so close to death since he came here. Even when he faced the evil god, his soul was shattered. Even when he faced the orc assassin, he could fight back and forth. Even when he dueled with a high-level extraordinary, at least he could fight back. But the stick came suddenly, and his bloody glory was sealed. All his superpowers were gone, so he had no way of noticing it, and he almost didn't react. Charlotte stretched out his foot to pick up the branch on the ground, reached out and grabbed it, and pulled it out with his backhand, just hitting the wrist of the attacker. The black iron stick fell to the ground with a clang. Charlotte looked at it intently, and was furious. She shouted, "Why do you want to kill me?" The one who attacked was a pirate from another section of the wall. The other party was panicked and shouted, "It was the monkey boss who wanted to kill you." "It's none of my business." Charlotte knew the monkey boss. In the pirate group, no one would remember other people's names, and not many people were willing to mention their own names. After all, they all had a dishonorable past, so the nickname was a daily name. The monkey boss was also an orc. Charlotte didn't know which tribe he was from, but he was definitely an orc from the Mankin tribe. He was born with a red face, very cunning, and ruthless. He treated his subordinates very viciously, and treated slaves even worse. There were even rumors that he loved to eat people, often killing slaves and secretly cooking them. Charlotte asked herself that she had never offended the monkey boss, but he was not the kind of person who would care about things. Anyway, everyone was an enemy, so why bother about why they became enemies? Isn't that just asking for trouble, looking for boredom, and self-pull? Charlotte picked up the black iron stick. Although it was not too long, It was still about 1.5 picometers. He swung it with his body like a red bear. It was still a little light, but it was much better than a branch. The pirate who attacked him saw that Charlotte had no expression on his face and thought that he didn't dare to offend the monkey boss, so he turned and ran. Charlotte waited until he ran more than 10 steps before he let go of the iron stick and hit the pirate on the head, causing his brain to burst. Charlotte was sometimes very soft-hearted, but when she met someone who wanted to kill him, she would always kill him without mercy. After beating the pirate to death with a stick, Charlotte walked over, picked up one of his feet, and dragged the pirate to another section of the city wall. The monkey boss, who was from the Mankin tribe, was whispering with a few of his men with a smile. When he saw Charlotte, he panicked and quickly picked up an iron fork and shouted, "Jin Nan! What do you want to do?" Charlotte shouted, "You ordered your men to sneak attack me and want to blow my head off. I want to duel with you." When the monkey boss heard this, he became smiling again. His panic just now was because he had done something wrong, and his mentality was not thick enough. He was not afraid of a little bear man who had just joined the Golden Goat Pirates. The orc pirate shouted, "There is a distinguished guest from the New World who wants to eat bear paws. You are the only bear man here. I wanted you to die peacefully. Since you don't want to die honestly, let me kill you with my own hands." He waved his hands and shouted, "Everyone come together." The monkey boss spoke with extraordinary momentum, like a small pirate leader, but he spoke as old Forer, and didn't do it himself. Dozens of pirates rushed up immediately. On St. Michael Island, people fight and die every day. Strength is king. No one cares about right or wrong, and there is no justice or reason. Charlotte took a deep breath and forced himself to get used to the habits of the pirates. Facing the first pirate who rushed over, he turned his body to the side, stretched out his foot to trip him, and hit him with a stick. He hit the back of his head immediately. This vital part was hit by the iron stick. This pirate was not extraordinary. He had no fighting spirit to protect himself, so he died without a word. Charlotte even complained leisurely, "You left without inviting people to dinner? It's not polite." In order to transform into a bear man, Charlotte asked the bear man's martial arts from Bai Zhangzhang, Dao Zhongba, Shangmi, and even Shangwandi. This old bear stick method was really skillful. Even if he was alone against dozens of people, he still did not lose the upper hand. In an instant, he knocked down 5 or 6 people. This group of pirates were not elite soldiers. They could not bully others altogether. Seeing that they were getting more and more disadvantaged, no one dared to step forward. Charlotte ignored the pirates who surrounded him, not daring to fight or retreat, and ran wildly with black iron sticks, rushing towards the monkey boss. The old orc pirate roared, holding the iron fork in both hands, and stabbed him in the chest. Charlotte blocked it with her backhand and knocked the iron fork away. The two fought fiercely for 5, 6 or 7 rounds. Charlotte's transformed red bear boy was stronger and his stick skills were more sophisticated. He deliberately made a flaw, and then hit the neck of the Mankin orc with a stick. Charlotte looked up to the sky and howled, and the power seed in her lower abdomen suddenly exploded. Chapter 274 Jump Down. Whether in the previous life or in this life, this was the first time that Charlotte had Dao Qi. However, it was not the night Dao Qi of the human race, but the bloodthirsty Dao Qi of the beast race. Bloody glory belongs to the general category of evil energy. Although it is very close to Dao Qi, it is not Dao Qi. He transformed bloody glory into the starry Dao Qi of Asilo, which is not Dao Qi. Blood flame Qi. Okay. Blood flame Qi is also a general category of evil energy, not Dao Qi. However, Charlotte Mecklenburg did not have any obsession. As long as he could become extraordinary, he would take any type of path. That's why he gave up practicing Dao Qi and turned to practicing bloody glory in college. Charlotte Wang Haisheng didn't care so much about what he practiced. In fact, he wanted to become a Dark Moon warlock. Unfortunately, his predecessor had already created the character, so he had no choice but to continue on the extraordinary path of bloody glory. Charlotte stood proudly, with a bloodthirsty glow on his body. Holding a murderous black iron rod in his hand, he swept his eyes sideways. The pirates on this section of the wall were all trembling with fear. I don't know who was so smart, and suddenly shouted, "Welcome, Lord Jin Nan, to take over our team." Charlotte was very satisfied with this guy and shouted, "Is there anyone who is not convinced?" With the prestige of him just killing the monkey boss, and the bloodthirsty glow of his body, it is clear that he has been promoted to extraordinary. How dare these ordinary pirates resist? They all believed that with the cruelty of this little bear man, whoever said he disagreed now would have to give the new leader a meal in the evening. Orcs love to eat people, which is a deeply rooted orc setting in the hearts of pirates. Charlotte didn't expect that she hadn't made it in her original team, but she became a leader in another team. Pirates are originally chaotic, often fighting privately, and deaths are commonplace. They are ordinary pirates who are considered small fish, and no one cares even if they change a few leaders. Charlotte became the leader of dozens of pirates. The middle-level leaders of the Golden Goat Pirates did not react at all, and the top leaders did not know about it at all. With the experience of the previous period, he quickly became friends with the slaves he managed and the pirates under him, and even promoted more than a dozen strong slaves to pirates. He also secretly taught them the Beast Scout transformation technique, the overback Red Bear Warrior transformation, which greatly increased the strength of his team. The Beast Scout transformation technique is the signature secret method of the Orc Assassin League. The cat mask refined by the Beast Scout transformation technique is even the identity certificate of the killer from the Orc Assassin League. Before Charlotte, there had never been a human who practiced. The bear people knew the secret method of the Orc Assassin League, which was simply seamless. Even if they were taught the Beast Scout transformation technique, the overback Red Bear Warrior transformation, this group of slaves might not have a single one who could be promoted to extraordinary. Even if there were one or two people who worked tirelessly and finally promoted to extraordinary, it would probably be a few years or even more than 10 years later. Charlotte was not trying to cultivate extraordinary people. He had two purposes. Practicing the Beast Scout transformation technique could increase strength, just like people who follow the path of knights. Before being promoted to knights, practicing breathing techniques could also strengthen their physique. Charlotte's identity at this time was an orc, a young red bear with a back. This identity had advantages, that is, orcs would feel close to him, but also disadvantages, that is, humans would be wary of him. After all, orcs did not have a good reputation among humans. However, the slaves who were taught the Beast Scout transformation technique and the transformation of the Red Bear Warrior by him, no matter where they were originally from, would naturally feel close to him and have a subtle feeling of fellow race. Charlotte had been in St. Michael Island for more than half a month. Not only did she gain a firm foothold, but she also roughly understood the information of the island city. St. Michael City has a population of nearly 100,000, which is considered a large city even in the old world. You should know that the capital of the Principality of Behemoth, Mostar Castle, is about this size. The top 10 cities on Garling Island combined may not have as many people as St. Michael City. However, most of the population of this island city is floating population, including pirates and black merchants who come with pirate ships and merchant ships, and slaves who are sold. The population that actually belongs to the Golden Goat Pirates is only about 30,000. More than half of them are full-time pirates, and the other half are low-level pirates who do odd jobs. They are not qualified to go to sea or board ships, and they may even become part of the cargo. For example, if a big shot wants to eat bear paws, the monkey boss dares to set his sights on Charlotte and send people out to kill the bear and take the paws, but the monkey boss failed to flatter him, so he died and no one would help him. These low-level pirates who do odd jobs nominally belong to the Golden Goat Pirates, but in fact they are divided into more than 10 groups, and each group has an extraordinary boss. Charlotte killed the monkey boss and burst into fighting spirit, which has caught the eyes of many pirate group leaders. During this period of time, someone occasionally hinted that he should go to a certain leader. Even though the leaders of these pirate groups were promoted to extraordinary positions by chance, their vision and insight were far from enough. When they tried to win people over, they didn't even give a serious political promise, such as the promise of captain, leader, deputy, etc. Charlotte ignored them all. A pirate ran over with great interest and shouted, "Boss! Someone is willing to sell what you want, but the price is a bit high." As a bear man, Charlotte was of course not convenient to use the martial arts of vampires, and the martial arts of the Blood Clan required various superpowers to promote. Pure moves were mediocre in power. He wanted to get a bear weapon. On St. Michael's Island, of course there would be no weapon store. He couldn't get the most convenient meteor hammer, so he wanted to get an iron chain. The thing that St. Michael's Island lacked the most was ships, and there was naturally no shortage of iron chains for anchors, but most ships would not carry many of them. Charlotte went out to buy a section of iron chain, but she has not succeeded so far. The pirate brought back good news. But Charlotte was not very excited. He only needed this weapon temporarily, so it didn't matter if he didn't have it. He said calmly, "How much did the other party offer?" The pirate said, 5 gold pounds. Charlotte cursed, "Let him die. Extraordinary weapons are not that expensive. He wants 5 gold pounds for a broken iron chain? Why doesn't he rob it?" The pirate who reported the news was a little confused, and replied, "This iron chain was robbed. They attacked a merchant ship, killed the people on the merchant ship, burned the ship, and robbed the wealth on the ship. Halfway through, they felt that the anchor was a little heavy, and when they pulled it up, they found that the anchor chain of the merchant ship was hung. However, the other party insisted on not lowering the price. He also said that if there is no 5 gold pounds, he would rather throw it into the sea than give it to us at a low price." Charlotte snorted and didn't want to buy this expensive chain. This group of pirates had no credit. He believed that even if he was willing to introduce this price, the other party would raise the price. Moreover, although he was a small leader, he didn't have any money. The monkey boss didn't drop gold coins before he died. His money was all in machupi. He couldn't afford such an expensive weapon. Charlotte said, "Let them throw it into the sea. It's just a piece of chain. There is no shortage of this stuff on the sea." Charlotte saw from a distance that a team was patrolling over and hurriedly kicked the little pirate in front of him away. The patrolling pirates were all members of the real Golden Goat Pirates. They were full-time pirates, and they were not easy to fend for the low-level pirates who did odd jobs like them. When the patrol team came over, a middle-aged pirate looked at Charlotte and said, "Are you Jinan?" Charlotte smiled and said, "It's me. What's the order, sir?" The middle-aged pirate smiled coldly, pointed to the seawater under the city wall, and said, "Jump down." The pirates behind him laughed and showed a playful expression, wanting to see Charlotte embarrassed. This pirate, nicknamed Black Sea Horse, likes to think about the low-level pirates who do odd jobs. It is his habit to make people jump into the sea. If someone resists orders, he will use the reason of not obeying orders to torture them. There are more than 100 low-level pirates who died in his hands. He is also notorious in St. Michael City. When Charlotte heard this order, she had no intention of resisting at all. She even made a running start. When passing by the pirate Black Sea Horse, she suddenly stretched out her hands and hugged him, and jumped off the city wall together. Chapter 275 11th level versus 4th level. Black Seahorse was caught off guard and was actually captured by Charlotte. He was in midair and yelled, "Boy, I will make you die miserably and suffer a lot." He was not worried about the danger. Although the walls of St. Michael City were high, there was seawater underneath. He was a 4th level extraordinary and was confident that he could easily get out of trouble. Black Seahorse fell into the sea with Charlotte. The impact of jumping from the top of the city made both of them sink deep into the sea. The pirate leader could no longer curse and thought bitterly, "When we get back to the city, I will arrest you and put you in prison. I will use all kinds of torture to let this bear know what cruelty is." Do you think that you can be respected on St. Michael Island after being promoted to an extraordinary? I must tell you that a 1st level extraordinary is nothing. Black Seahorse was about to use his skills and float to the surface of the sea when he was hit hard in the lower abdomen. The force of this attack was not great, but it was very tricky, just like a bullet flying at high speed piercing his protective fighting spirit, causing all the energy in his body to spread out. After Charlotte fell into the sea, he regained his human body, and without looking at it again, he used the Beast Scout transformation technique and transformed into a red bear boy with a back and floated to the surface. When Charlotte reversed the bloody glory and turned into a star fighting spirit, he was as high as the 11th level, and was only one step away from the high-level extraordinary. Since he crossed over, he has been fighting against strong people who are many levels higher than him. If he can't kill a low-level extraordinary with 1 or 2 occasional singles, wouldn't it be a waste of time? Just when Charlotte surfaced, the essence of the vitality of the Black Seahorse suddenly shrank and condensed into a point. He became as scary as a skeleton. This shrunken life essence suddenly exploded in the next second, blowing the Black Seahorse into pieces, but strangely, there was not a drop of blood. This is the supernatural power derived from the star fighting spirit, Dark Erosion. Charlotte usually fights with people who are higher in rank than him, so this secret technique is not very powerful. After all, his enemies are either peerless geniuses or heroes of the world, and they can resist the secret technique of Dark Erosion. However, Dark Erosion is one of the 3 emperors of the Blood Clan, the secret technique of Asilo. Facing a mere 4th-rank pirate, the strange and domineering nature of Dark Erosion is undoubtedly revealed. Charlotte shouted loudly on the sea, and soon one of his pirates lowered a rope and pulled him up. However, the men of the Black Sea Horse waited on the top of the city for a long time, but their leader did not come up. The pirates looked at each other, not knowing what to do. The Black Sea Horse can play tricks on Charlotte because he is a fourth-rank extraordinary. But the Black Sea Horse does not have a second extraordinary. How dare they speak foul language to the extraordinary Charlotte, or even accuse him? The pirate group only talks about personal strength. Who cares about your status? Even if these pirates are official pirates, they dare not accuse Charlotte. As time went by, the Black Sea Horse still did not float to the surface. The pirates became more and more frightened. They all had a premonition that their leader was finished. Charlotte took the towel handed over by his men, wiped the seawater off his face casually, smiled honestly, and said, "Do you want to follow me in the future?" The regular pirates looked at each other for a few times and followed Charlotte silently. This is a pirate group. There is no rule at all. It is purely based on strength. If there is no strong boss to protect them, they can't maintain their status at all. Maybe they will become low-level pirates doing odd jobs in the blink of an eye. Although Charlotte may not be a good target for surrender, these pirates actually have no good choice. Charlotte took this group of pirates and her former men, swaggered to patrol once, and then went back to the inner city without any stage fright. The number of people in the Golden Goat Pirates is really too large. Ordinary small cities do not have so many people. The pirates also have very few management talents, so the management is quite chaotic. The lower-level pirates who did odd jobs formed gangs and were not supervised by anyone. The regular pirates were a little better, but not much better. Charlotte replaced Black Sea Horse, occupied his original residence, and replaced his original patrol mission. He was a little worried at first, but soon found that no one cared, and no one even asked him, where did Black Sea Horse go? Charlotte lived in a peaceful era. Because of his age, he had never seen the so-called underworld, mafia, gangs, societies, and names, so he really couldn't understand what kind of social state it was that as long as the leader was killed, the opponent's power could be seized. However, Charlotte quickly adapted to her new identity and her new job, and began to habitually explode soldiers. There were about 10 sections of the wall patrolled by Black Sea Horse, and each section had a group of pirates with hundreds of slaves, as few as 100 or 200. Charlotte did not intervene in these small groups of pirates, as the pirates were unruly and difficult to subdue. Instead, he selected 200 or 300 people from the slaves, expanding his direct team to more than 500. The lives of these slaves were bleak, and most of them were grateful for being rescued by him, and their loyalty was far better than that of the pirates. He selected dozens of the strongest slaves from the group of rescued slaves and taught them the Beast Scout transformation technique, the Overback Red Bear Warrior transformation. Orc slaves only accounted for a small part, and most of the slaves sold on St. Michael Island were humans. Although the slaves who were taught the secret method could not be promoted to extraordinary in a short period of time and could only increase their strength, they naturally developed a good impression of the Bear Boy after learning the Overback Red Bear Warrior transformation, as if they had met someone from their hometown. As for the leakage of the secret method, Charlotte was not worried at all. First of all, he would only select slaves to teach secretly. These slaves did not know anyone on St. Michael Island at all, and they were oppressed, so they were closer to him. Secondly, he was adventurous, so he didn't care that much. Anyway, there was always a way to solve the problem. He believed that as long as he showed enough strength, everyone would choose loyalty. Charlotte's rapid rise among the pirates quickly attracted the attention of the superiors. One of the 10 generals of the Golden Goat Pirates, nicknamed Deep Sea Squid, the big boss who controlled 3 ships, suddenly named Charlotte and asked him to accompany him to welcome the flagship of the Golden Goat Fleet. Charlotte didn't know why she was named, but she still took her men to the port. Deep Sea Squid was already one of the top leaders in St. Michael. In addition to the leader, the Golden Goat Pirates also had 5 deputy leaders, and below them were the 10 generals. Each general had thousands of subordinates and at least 3 ships. A certain pirate leader that Charlotte had killed was one of the 10 generals of the Golden Goat Pirates. So, Menelman said that he was very famous in St. Michael Island. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone, see you in the next video.